Lions. All right, so picture this. You're out on the African savanna. The sun's dropping low, and suddenly you feel that weird prickle on the back of your neck. You turn, and there it is, a lion. The king of the jungle, except here's the twist. You're in its backyard. Now, most people think the obvious move is to run. I mean, who wouldn't? Big cat, giant teeth, a roar that rattles your ribs. But here's the thing. Running is the worst idea you could ever have. You'd last about 2 seconds before that lion is on your back, because lions can sprint faster than Usain Bolt and leap further than your whole couch. Running just confirms what it already suspects. You're prey. Here's the survival trick most people don't know. Lions actually hate being stared down. No joke. If you lock eyes with a lion and refuse to look away, it can sometimes back off. Why? Because in lion language, eye contact means, I see you, I'm not fooled, I know you're there. And lions are ambush predators. They rely on sneaking up, catching things off guard. If you look them dead in the eyes, it throws off their whole plan. You've just told them, sorry buddy, surprise attack canceled. Now, imagine you actually do this. Your heart's racing, sweat's dripping, and your brain screaming, don't blink, don't run. You stare, and the lion hesitates. It might huff, growl, maybe even make a fake lunge just to see if you'll flinch. That's the scary part. Those mock charges are no joke. Most animals would bolt, but if you hold steady, the lion often decides you're more trouble than you're worth. After all, lions don't want to risk injury. A broken paw means no dinner, and no dinner means death, even for the king. What's wild is that this isn't just some random survival guide advice. It's actually backed up by people who live near lions. Farmers, herders, even wildlife rangers have noticed this works. There are even stories of tribes painting fake eyes on the back of their heads to trick predators like lions and leopards into thinking they're always being watched. Crazy, right? Imagine walking around with eyes on your hat just to keep cats off your back. Of course, I should be real with you. This doesn't guarantee survival every time. Lions are unpredictable. If they're starving, protecting cubs, or just plain irritated, staring them down might not cut it. But if you ever find yourself face to face with one, the last thing you want to do is scream and sprint. Standing tall, making yourself look big, and locking eyes gives you a fighting chance. And sometimes, in survival, that's all you can hope for. Just a chance. So here's the question. If it were you, do you think you'd have the guts to stare down a lion instead of running?
Hyenas. So let's set the scene. You're walking back to camp late at night, maybe carrying a flashlight that's starting to flicker, and you hear this laugh. Not the funny kind. Not your friend's giggle. No, this is the kind of sound that makes your stomach sink. The high-pitched, echoing laugh of a hyena. Creepy, right? A lot of people think of hyenas as scavengers, like they're just nature's cleanup crew. But don't be fooled. These animals are apex predators in their own right, and they're way braver than you think. Now, here's the weird part most people don't know. Hyenas like to test you. They don't always attack straight away. Instead, they'll do something called a mock charge. Picture this. 1 or 2 hyenas suddenly boat toward you at full speed, jaws open, eyes locked on you. Your brain screams, I'm about to be dinner. But at the last second, they stop. Just skid to a halt. What are they doing? They're checking your reaction. If you run, if you panic, if you stumble, that's their green light. You've just told them, yep, I'm weak. Easy meal. But here's the survival trick. If you stand your ground, and I mean really hold firm, don't flinch, don't scream, don't back up, they often lose interest. Hyenas are bold, but they're also cautious. They don't want to risk serious injury because just like lions, if they get hurt, hunting gets a whole lot harder. By refusing to give in to that mock charge, you're basically telling them, not today. You're not getting me without a fight. And guess what? Hyenas respect that. Imagine being in that moment, though. It takes guts. Your heart's pounding so loud you think the hyena can hear it. Your legs want to run so badly you can feel them twitch. But survival is about doing the thing your instincts hate. In this case, standing still. It's not easy, but it works more often than you expect. Here's another thing. Hyenas are smarter than they look. They live in clans that can be over 50 strong, and they actually have social hierarchies more complex than some primates. That means when they're testing you, they're not just acting randomly. They're calculating. They know if you run, they can coordinate, surround you, and end it quickly. But if you hold strong, suddenly you've thrown off their math. They can't be sure if you're going to fight back, and fighting back means risk. Now, locals who live around hyena territory already know this. In some African villages, people tell stories of staring down hyenas or clapping their hands loudly to show they weren't afraid. And it's not superstition, it's lived experience. Think about it. If your ancestors survived by knowing this trick, of course they'd pass it down. So here's the real question. Could you do it? Could you stare down an animal with jaws that can crush bones, with a laugh that echoes in the dark and refuse to move? Because with hyenas, survival is less about running fast and more about proving you're not an easy target.
Tigers. So here's something terrifying to imagine. You're walking through the edge of a jungle, and suddenly you get that creepy, skin-crawling feeling like you're being watched. You don't see anything at first. The trees are quiet, the air feels heavy. Then, out of the corner of your eye, there's the faintest flicker of orange and black. A tiger. And not just any tiger. The largest cat on Earth, weighing as much as a motorbike and strong enough to drag a buffalo like it's nothing. Now, most people think if a tiger's on you, that's it, game over. But here's the weird, rarely talked about survival trick. Tigers almost always circle their prey before they strike. That's right, they don't just charge in blindly. Tigers are stalkers. They want to come at you from the perfect angle, usually from behind or the side. They circle, they wait, and they look for that 1 second when you're not paying attention. And that's where the survival tip comes in. If you start turning constantly, like slowly pivoting in a circle, keeping your head up and your eyes scanning, you actually mess up the tiger's whole plan. They hate that. You're basically saying, I see you, you're not sneaking up on me. Now, this might sound simple, but imagine being in that situation. Your brain is telling you to run. Your body's begging you to climb a tree. But here's the thing. You can't outrun a tiger, and you definitely can't outclimb one either. They're faster, stronger, and better at trees than you'll ever be. What you can do is rob them of surprise. Tigers don't like fair fights. They rely on ambush. If you keep turning, you're removing their biggest weapon. Here's where it gets even more interesting. In parts of India where tiger attacks were once common, locals came up with a clever solution. They actually wore masks on the back of their heads. I'm not joking. Masks with painted faces, so it always looked like they were being watched. And guess what? Tiger attacks in those areas dropped dramatically. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was just predator psychology. The tiger thought,
Dang, this human's got eyes in the back of his head, no chance of sneaking up on. So it stayed away. Of course, none of this means a tiger's harmless. If one's hungry enough or desperate enough, it might still take the risk. And trust me, you don't want to test a tiger's patience. But here's the deal. If you're unlucky enough to be in tiger territory and you sense one nearby, your best move isn't to bolt. It's to keep turning, keep watching, and make that tiger think twice. So here's my question to you. Could you really do it? Could you stand in the middle of a jungle, heart pounding out of your chest, and just keep spinning, waiting, knowing a tiger is somewhere in the shadows? Because sometimes survival isn't about strength. It's about outsmarting the predator that's trying to outsmart you.
Bears. Okay, so let's talk about bears for a second. Massive, powerful, and faster than most people realize. You see a bear, and your first thought is probably, there's no way I can outrun that thing. And you'd be right. Bears can sprint faster than a racehorse over short distances. But here's a survival fact hardly anyone talks about, and it's kind of an uncomfortable one. Bears are extremely sensitive to smells, especially human odors, and one odor in particular has been linked to several surprising bear encounters. The smell of menstruation. Yeah, it sounds strange, but it's real. Bears have an insanely powerful sense of smell. We're talking about a nose so strong it can detect food from miles away. Some scientists say a bear's nose is about 7 times more sensitive than a bloodhound's, and those dogs can sniff out lost people under piles of rubble. Now imagine that level of detection in the wild. Food, trash, toothpaste, deodorant, gum wrappers, they smell it all. And menstrual blood, that's even stronger. There have been documented cases, especially in black bear and grizzly territory, where menstruating women experienced more frequent approaches or even attacks. Researchers studying bears and national parks noticed patterns that couldn't just be explained by bad luck. The odor itself seemed to trigger curiosity, and for a bear, curiosity usually means investigating with teeth. So what do you do about it? First, it's not about panic. It's about preparation. Experts actually advise that anyone who's menstruating in bear country should take extra care with how they handle hygiene. Things like using sealed containers for sanitary products, never burying them in the ground because the smell still seeps out, and definitely not burning them in campfires. Bears are attracted to burning smells too, so that's basically a double invitation. Instead, the advice is to pack them out in airtight, odor-proof bags. Not glamorous, sure, but it could literally save your life. Now, imagine the scenario. You're camping in Alaska or Yellowstone, and you suddenly hear branches snapping. You look up, and a huge grizzly is sniffing the air, moving toward your camp. If that bear has caught wind of anything unusual, whether it's your snack wrappers or menstrual odor, it might come closer just to investigate. And with bears, investigating can turn deadly fast. That's why park rangers constantly hammer the message: minimize your scent footprint. It's not just food, it's everything. It's also worth noting that not every bear attack has anything to do with menstruation. Sometimes it's just bad timing, cubs nearby, territorial instincts, or a surprise encounter on a trail. But the fact that something so natural and overlooked could increase your risk, that's the kind of survival detail most people never hear about. So here's the big takeaway. If you're in bear country, scent management is survival. Bears don't see you as prey the way a tiger might. They see you as a puzzle, and if you smell interesting enough, they'll come closer to solve it. Would you want to risk being the puzzle a bear decides to solve?
Wolves. So imagine this. You're hiking with a group of friends in the middle of a snowy forest. The trees are quiet. The air is so still it almost feels like it's holding its breath. Then, somewhere out in the distance, you hear it. That long, haunting howl. It's beautiful, sure, but also terrifying. Because when one wolf howls, it's never alone. There's a pack. And here's the scary truth. Wolves aren't just strong, they're strategists. They know how to pick apart a group, and the way they do it is by going after stragglers. That's right. If you fall behind, even by a little, you're suddenly the most vulnerable. Wolves are endurance hunters. They're not built for speed like lions or cheetahs. Instead, they tire you out, track you for miles, and wait for you to slip up. The weak, the slow, or the isolated are always the first choice. That's how they take down animals way bigger than themselves: elk, moose, even bison. And guess what? Humans aren't so different in their eyes. So what's the survival trick here? It's simple but powerful. Stay grouped and stay vocal. Wolves are far less likely to attack a tight, loud, confident group. Why? Because to them, a pack of humans isn't prey, it's competition. And wolves don't want competition. They want an easy win. If you stick close together, call out to each other, maybe even make some noise with sticks or clapping, you're telling them, don't even think about it. Now, picture the flip side. You wander a little too far from your group. Maybe you stop to tie your shoe, or you're just walking slower. Suddenly, you notice shadows flickering between the trees. Wolves are incredible at staying just out of sight, but close enough that you know you're being watched. And once they sense weakness, they'll test you, pushing closer, waiting for that moment when they can surround you. It's chilling to think about, but it's exactly how they've survived for thousands of years. Here's something else most people don't realize. Wolves communicate with each other constantly while they're hunting. That howl in the distance, it's not just noise, it's coordination. They're telling the pack where to move, how to flank, and when to close in. If you've got a group and you respond by being loud yourselves, you're basically sending a counter message. We see you. We're ready. Don't waste your energy. This is actually backed up by history. In medieval Europe, travelers crossing wolf country were often told to sing, shout, or even bang pots together as they moved. Not because wolves are scared of sound in general, but because the noise showed unity. And unity makes wolves hesitate. They're smart enough to know a fight could leave them injured, and an injured wolf is a dead wolf. So, the takeaway is simple but nerve-wracking. Don't get separated. Don't be the one lagging behind. Because wolves don't just hunt animals, they hunt patterns. And if the pattern shows one person drifting away from the pack, that's who they'll go for first. So, let me ask you this. If you heard that howl in the distance, would you huddle closer with your friends and make noise? Or would you take your chances alone at the back?
Leopards. All right, let's talk about leopards for a second.
If lions are the kings of the savanna, and tigers rule the jungle floor, leopards are the silent assassins of the treetops. They're not just strong, they're ridiculously strong. A leopard can drag a carcass heavier than itself straight up a tree, just to keep it away from hyenas or lions. Think about that for a second. Imagine someone carrying your entire refrigerator on their back and climbing up a tree with it. That's leopard-level strength. And here's the part most people don't think about. They use that same advantage when they hunt. Leopards love to attack from above. Picture this. You're walking through a dense forest. Maybe it's late afternoon, lights dimming, shadows everywhere. You're scanning the ground for snakes or roots so you don't trip, and you feel pretty good about yourself. Then, bam! Out of nowhere, something drops from the branches above. Before you can even react, claws sink into your shoulders, and you're pinned. That's the leopard's signature move. Silent, fast, from above. So how do you avoid becoming leopard lunch? The key is simple but surprising. Don't just watch the ground. Scan the tree lines. Leopards rely on people or animals being distracted below. They assume you'll never look up. But if you're constantly checking the branches, you're breaking their advantage. Remember, like most big cats, leopards prefer ambushes. If they know you see them, they often don't bother attacking. They're opportunists, not risk-takers. Now I know what you're thinking. Easier said than done. Who's really going to walk through a jungle staring up at trees the whole time? That's where awareness comes in. Hunters and trackers in leopard country often train themselves to glance up every few steps. Not a long stare, just a quick check. It's the difference between being surprised and having a chance to react. Here's a wild fact. In some parts of India, villagers started wearing masks on the back of their heads when walking through leopard country. Why? Because leopards, like tigers, hate attacking something that looks like it's watching them. The mask trick not just cut down on tiger attacks, it worked on leopards too. It's such a simple, almost comical idea, but it actually saved lives. Now let's imagine you're unlucky and a leopard actually does leap at you. What then? Experts say your best bet is to protect your neck and face. Leopards go for the throat first, just like lions. Throwing up your arms, crouching or rolling to the side might buy you precious seconds. And remember, fighting back matters. Leopards aren't like crocodiles or sharks. They can be driven off if they think you're more trouble than you're worth. So, the survival lesson here isn't just don't walk alone at night in leopard country. It's about being aware of the one place almost no one pays attention to, above your head. Because the forest floor might look calm, but the real danger could be sitting silently in the branches above, waiting for the perfect moment to drop. Here's my question for you. Do you think you'd remember to look up? Or would you be one of those people who only realized too late that the danger wasn't in front of you? It was hanging right above.
Jaguars don't mess around. Out of all the big cats in the world, these guys are the ultimate skull crushers. Literally. Most big cats, like lions or leopards, go for the throat. They strangle, suffocate, or crush the windpipe. But the jaguar? Nah. Jaguars have one of the strongest bites in the animal kingdom. They don't waste time choking prey out. They just sink their teeth right through the skull and straight into the brain. Quick, clean, brutal. That bite force is insane, up to 1,500 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, that's enough to pierce through turtle shells, caiman skulls, even armored reptiles that most predators wouldn't even bother with. In the Amazon, jaguars snack on creatures that other hunters avoid, simply because their bite is so ridiculously overpowered. So if you ever wonder why jaguars are feared even by locals who live near them every day, that's why. Now here's the part most people don't think about. If a jaguar attacks human, their usual target isn't the throat. It's your head. They aim to pierce through the skull just like they would with other animals, which is terrifying but also kind of useful to know. Because it means if you ever find yourself in that nightmare scenario, your best defense isn't your legs or even your chest. It's covering your head with your arms. Think about it. Your arms are bony. Your skull is already one of the hardest parts of your body, and stacking the two together creates a kind of shield. Sure, it's not perfect. Jaguars are insanely strong. But experts say that getting an arm between their teeth and your brain could mean the difference between life and death. Instead of a clean, brain-piercing kill shot, they might only get your forearm, which, painful as that sounds, is survivable. Losing an arm is better than losing your life. But there's more. Jaguars, like leopards, are ambush predators. They don't like fights that drag out. If their first attack doesn't go as planned, if you're still struggling, screaming, swinging, there's a chance they'll back off. Not because they're scared of you, but because they're calculating. This prey isn't worth the risk. Remember, predators survive by avoiding unnecessary injuries. A wounded jaguar can't hunt, and in the wild, that's basically a death sentence. So here's the survival trick. Protect your head, fight back, and make noise. Don't freeze. Don't play dead. That only works with certain bears, not jaguars. Yell, kick, scratch, throw anything you've got. You want to break that perfect ambush pattern they rely on. If they can't end it quickly, they often won't continue. Of course, the best defense is awareness. Jaguars are stealth masters. They blend into the dappled shadows of rainforests so well that even seasoned trackers can miss them. Locals in South America say that by the time you see a jaguar, it's probably too late. Creepy, right? But remember what we said with leopards. Scanning your surroundings makes a huge difference. So here's the takeaway. If you ever find yourself in jaguar country, the Amazon, Central America, dense forest, understand this. You're dealing with a predator that doesn't play by the same rules as lions and tigers. They go straight for the head. And if that moment ever comes, your survival might depend on something as simple as wrapping your arms over your skull and refusing to give them the easy kill. Here's a question for you. If a jaguar lunged at you from the shadows, do you think your instinct would be to protect your head? Or would you freeze up and leave your most vulnerable spot exposed?
Mountain lions. Let's shift gears to North America for a moment because here's a predator that doesn't get nearly as much attention as lions or tigers, but it definitely deserves respect. The mountain lion, also called cougar, puma, or panther, depending on where you live. Same animal, different names. These cats don't roar like African lions. They don't stalk in giant prides. They're quiet, solitary, and ghost-like. In fact, most people in cougar country never even realize how often they're being watched. Creepy thought, right? Here's where it gets even more unsettling. Mountain lions are way more likely to stalk children than adults. There are dozens of cases where a cougar ignored grown-ups completely and went straight for the smallest person in the group. Why? Simple predator logic. Kids look like easier prey. They're smaller, they move unpredictably, and to a cougar's eyes, they resemble the size of a deer fawn, one of their favorite meals. That's why so many attacks involve kids who ran a few steps ahead of their parents on a trail. Now here's the survival trick that most people don't know. If you've got kids with you, put them on your shoulders. It sounds almost too simple, but it works for two reasons. First, raising a child onto your shoulders instantly makes the target look much bigger. Cougars are ambush hunters. They prefer to leap on something that looks vulnerable, not a towering creature with 4 arms and 2 heads. Second, by keeping the child close, you eliminate the exact weakness cougars are looking for: separation. There's an old saying in cougar country: don't let kids run ahead and don't let them fall behind. The second someone strays from the group, even just a few meters, they've basically painted a bullseye on their back. Cougars are patient stalkers. They'll follow silently, waiting for exactly that opportunity. So by lifting kids up, you're sending a loud visual message: no easy prey here. And let's talk about what happens if you actually spot one. Unlike jaguars or leopards, mountain lions don't usually attack immediately. They'll often stalk and test you first. You might catch a glimpse of them slinking along a ridge, circling, or crouching behind cover. If that happens, experts are crystal clear: make yourself look big. Wave your arms, open your jacket, shout, throw rocks, do whatever you can to look like a nightmare target. Running is the worst possible move. It flips the predator switch in their brain, chase mode activated. Now imagine you're hiking with kids and suddenly you see a cougar watching from the trees. Most parents' instincts might be to grab the child's hand and run. But that's exactly what you don't want to do. Running makes both of you look like prey. Instead, you lift the kid up, raise your voice, and show that you're not something to mess with. Believe it or not, that simple act has scared off more than a few cougars over the years. Here's something else worth remembering. Actual cougar attacks are rare, but when they happen, they tend to be intense. These cats aim for the neck or head, just like leopards. So if the worst happens and one lunges, fight like crazy. People have survived cougar attacks by stabbing them with pens, punching their eyes, even choking them out. These aren't unstoppable monsters. They're predators that back down if they realize their prey is too dangerous. So the big lesson here is this: in cougar country, kids are the #1 risk factor. Keeping them close, lifting them high, and refusing to run can mean the difference between a terrifying encounter and a tragedy. Quick question for you. If you were on a trail and suddenly spotted a cougar staring at you from the tree line, do you think you'd remember to stand tall, or would your first instinct be to scoop up your kid and run?
Komodo dragons. Let's step away from cats for a moment and talk about a predator that looks like it crawled straight out of prehistory: the Komodo dragon. These giant lizards live on a handful of Indonesian islands, and they're basically the closest thing we have to real-life dinosaurs. They can grow over 10 feet long, weigh more than 150 pounds, and despite looking slow and lumbering, they can sprint short distances faster than you'd expect. Not exactly something you want chasing you down a trail. For a long time, people thought the Komodo dragon's deadliest weapon was bacteria in its mouth. The story went like this: its teeth are so filthy that even a small bite would cause a massive infection later, and the prey would eventually collapse from blood poisoning. Sounds nasty, right? And while there is some truth to that, modern science discovered something even scarier. Komodo dragons don't just rely on dirty mouths. They actually have venom glands. That's right. These big lizards are venomous. Their bite releases toxins that thin your blood, lower your blood pressure, and stop clotting. So even if the bite doesn't kill you immediately, your body is suddenly working against itself. You'll bleed more, weaken faster, and eventually collapse, which is exactly what the dragon is waiting for. It'll trail you at a distance just like a horror movie villain until you're too weak to fight back. And here's where it gets terrifying for humans. Even a tiny scratch from a Komodo dragon isn't something you can shrug off. A nip, a graze, even just one tooth catching your skin, that's enough for venom to enter your bloodstream. People who've been bitten describe extreme swelling, dizziness, and in severe cases, collapse. It's not like a snake where you need the full injection. With Komodo venom, every drop matters. So the golden rule in Komodo territory is this: do not get close. Park rangers on Komodo Island constantly remind tourists that the dragons may look lazy and harmless while sunbathing, but they can explode into motion without warning. They're ambush predators, relying on bursts of speed and brute force. And remember, these things can take down deer, wild pigs, even water buffalo. You, standing there with your phone trying to take a selfie, you're not exactly safe. Now, if the worst happens and one does bite you, survival comes down to speed. You need medical help immediately. That venom is no joke. Tourists who survived Komodo bites often needed serious surgery and heavy doses of antibiotics and anti-venom treatments. So the idea of walking it off doesn't exist here. You get help or you don't make it. Another little tip, don't let their size fool you. Komodo dragons are excellent climbers when they're young, and they can swim too. That means there's no easy safe zone. Trees and water aren't guaranteed. The only real defense is awareness and distance. Locals know this well, which is why they often carry long sticks. If a Komodo charges, they can use the stick to push the head aside or create space. It's not about fighting. It's about buying yourself enough time to back away. So here's the bottom line. Komodo dragons aren't just slow, scaly curiosities for tourists to photograph. They're venomous predators built to outlast and overwhelm. And if you ever find yourself near one, remember, even the smallest scratch could be the start of a deadly countdown. Question for you. Would your instinct be to stand still and back away slowly? Or would you risk turning your back and running, knowing this lumbering lizard can suddenly explode into a sprint?
Dingoes. All right, let's head down under for a predator that doesn't usually make top danger lists, but has been feared and respected for thousands of years: the dingo. Dingoes are Australia's wild dogs, and while they might look like skinny golden retrievers, don't be fooled. These animals are highly skilled hunters, pack-oriented, and capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves. Kangaroos, wallabies, even livestock, they're not picky. Now, here's the thing about dingoes. Unlike big cats or bears, they don't rely on brute strength. They're opportunists. They test boundaries, they probe for weakness, and most importantly, they read body language. That's where one of the oldest tricks in survival history comes in, a trick Aboriginal Australians have known for generations. If a dingo approaches you aggressively, the smartest move isn't to run or hide. It's to stand upright, raise your arms, and clap loudly. Sounds almost silly, right? Like you're trying to scare off a stray dog at the park. But this simple act taps directly into how dingoes think. Remember, predators are constantly calculating risk versus reward. A crouched, quiet, submissive-looking human, that might look like something worth testing. But a tall, loud, unpredictable human, that suddenly looks like trouble. Dingoes aren't stupid. They know they're not the apex predator when humans are involved. Think of it this way. To a dingo, size is everything. When you raise your arms over your head, you immediately look twice as big.
Combine that with clapping or banging rocks together, and you're not prey anymore. You're a confusing, noisy creature that doesn't fit the script. Aboriginal people used this method for thousands of years while moving through dingo territory, and it's still taught today in rural Australia. Rangers will tell you, never run, stand tall, clap. And that's important because running triggers pursuit. Dingoes, like wolves, are pack hunters. They're hardwired to chase things that flee. Once you start running, you've basically volunteered for a test chase. And here's the kicker. Dingoes can run long distances without tiring. You, not so much. So the clap and stand strategy isn't just intimidation. It short-circuits their natural hunting instincts. Now, let's say you're hiking and you notice a dingo keeping its distance, circling, maybe watching you from the scrub. That's when you put the trick into practice. Plant your feet, stand upright, spread your arms wide, and clap hard and loud. Throw in a shout if you need to. Most of the time, the dingo will hesitate, reconsider, and back off. Remember, they survive by avoiding unnecessary risk. They're not suicidal. Of course, context matters. Dingoes that are food habituated, meaning they've been fed by humans, are bolder. They've learned that humans equal easy meals, which makes them more dangerous. In those cases, standing tall and clapping is still step one, but backing away slowly without turning your back is just as important. So the lesson here is fascinating. Sometimes survival isn't about fighting or fleeing. It's about knowing the psychology of the animal. A predator like the dingo isn't driven purely by hunger. It's driven by instinct, confidence, and risk assessment. Show them you're not an easy target, and 9 times out of 10, they'll move on. Here's my question for you. If a pack of dingoes started circling you in the outback, do you think you'd remember to raise your arms and clap? Or would your first instinct be to run and accidentally trigger the chase you were trying to avoid?
Crocodiles are the ultimate ambush predators. They've been doing the same thing for over 200 million years, and they're so good at it that they barely had to evolve since the time of the dinosaurs. If you've ever seen one lying still in the water, with just its eyes and nostrils poking out, you know why. Crocodiles are living traps, silent, patient, and ready to launch faster than you can even process what's happening. Here's the sneaky part. Crocodiles know exactly where to wait. They're not wandering around looking for food. They position themselves at water edges, the exact places where animals and people kneel down, squat, or bend over to drink, wash, or fish. That's their sweet spot. You lean in, you expose your neck or back, and in less than a second, they explode out of the water, jaws first. That's why one of the golden rules in croc country is this: never kneel or squat near the water's edge, ever. It sounds simple, but think about how often people do exactly that. Maybe you're camping by a river and you crouch down to rinse a pot. Or you're fishing and you squat at the bank to get closer to the water. In croc country, that's basically ringing a dinner bell. Most crocodile attacks don't happen to people swimming in the middle of a river. They happen at the shoreline, where someone was just a little too comfortable. And here's what makes them even scarier. Crocodiles can launch half their body length straight out of the water in one lunge. If you're thinking, well, I'll just stand back a few feet. Nope. A big croc can cover that distance in less than a blink. Their burst speed is insane. We're talking 0 to 60, or at least 0 to full attack mode in a fraction of a second. So how do you stay safe? First rule, Keep a buffer zone. Locals in croc-heavy areas of Africa and Australia say never stand closer than 5 meters, practically 16 feet, from the water's edge. That gives you at least some reaction time. Second rule, always stand upright when near the shoreline. Standing keeps your body balanced and your vision high. If a croc does lunge, you're in a better position to leap back or dodge, not stuck with your weight forward and your hands in the water. It's worth pointing out, too, crocodiles aren't just waiting for you to dip your toes in. They're strategic. They know where villages fetch water, where fishermen unload boats, where animals come to drink. They've learned human patterns and take full advantage. That's why attacks often happen in the exact same spots year after year. Here's the chilling thought. When you're near a croc river, you'll probably never see the one that's watching you. They're masters of camouflage. That muddy, still surface, there might already be a set of eyes locked onto you. And they'll wait as long as it takes for you to make one mistake, like squatting down just a little too close. So the takeaway is crystal clear. In croc country, the danger isn't when you're in the water, it's when you're next to it. The simplest act of staying on your feet, staying back, and never kneeling could be the difference between walking away and being dragged under. Here's my question for you. If you were camping by a river in croc country, do you think you'd remember to resist the natural instinct to crouch down, or would you accidentally make yourself the perfect target?
Saltwater crocodiles. If freshwater crocodiles are terrifying, then saltwater crocodiles, or salties as Australians call them, are on a whole different level. These are the largest reptiles alive today. Males can grow over 20 feet long and weigh more than a ton. That's not a reptile anymore. That's a living tank with teeth. And unlike their river-dwelling cousins, saltwater crocs don't just stick to rivers and swamps. They'll cruise through coastal seas, estuaries, even open ocean for miles. That means they're not just ambush predators, they're stealthy travelers. Now here's a detail that surprises a lot of people. Salties don't usually care about splashing boats. If you're zipping down a river or even making a racket with paddles, most of the time they won't launch at you. A boat looks big, solid, and intimidating. Crocs are smart enough to recognize that. They're not going to waste their energy trying to chomp through fiberglass or wood. But here's the catch, literally. What they do notice are the little things that break that big, intimidating shape. A hand trailing in the water, a foot dangling over the side, someone leaning out too far. To a croc, that's not part of the boat. That's prey. That's dinner. And they can strike faster than you could even pull your arm back. There are chilling real-world cases of this. People sitting in canoes, dangling fingers to feel the water, gone in a flash. Fishermen rinsing their hands over the side, snatched. Salties have lightning-fast reflexes, and once they get a grip, it's basically game over. Their bite force is the strongest on the planet, stronger than great white sharks, and they follow up with the infamous death roll. That's when they spin violently in the water to tear off chunks of flesh or drown their prey. So what's the survival trick? It's so basic it almost sounds like common sense. Never ever dangle anything over the side of a boat in croc country. Not your hand, not your foot, not even fishing gear unless you're careful. Locals in northern Australia know this rule by heart.
but tourists ignore it all the time. The water looks calm, no croc in sight, so they relax. But salties are ambush experts. You won't see them until it's already too late. Another key thing, salties can actually leap out of the water. They've been filmed exploding straight up to grab birds off low branches or meat hung from poles. That means even leaning out too far above the surface is a bad idea. These guys aren't bound by the waterline. And here's the creepiest part. Crocodiles are patient. They'll shadow a boat for miles, just waiting for someone to slip up. Imagine sitting there, unaware, while a 15-foot predator glides silently underneath, tracking every movement. It's like being in a horror movie where the monster doesn't even need to chase you. It just waits. So the lesson is clear. In saltwater crocodile country, the boat is your safety zone, but only if you respect it. The second you break that outline by dangling an arm or leg, you stop being part of the big, scary boat and start being just another piece of prey. Let me ask you this. If you were drifting peacefully down a crocodile river, would you trust yourself to keep your hands inside the boat the whole time? Or would curiosity tempt you into doing the exact thing a salty is waiting for?
Alligators. Let's move from crocodiles to their close cousins, alligators. Now, at first glance, they might seem like the friendlier version of crocs. Smaller, less aggressive, and more likely to avoid humans. And in some ways, that's true. If you've ever been to Florida or Louisiana, you've probably seen gators lounging like oversized logs in the sun. Most of the time, they look downright lazy. But don't be fooled. When provoked, or when they see an opportunity, they're every bit as dangerous as their saltwater cousins. And the gator's signature move? The infamous death roll. Here's how it works. When an alligator latches on to prey, it doesn't just bite down and wait. No, it spins hard. They twist their entire body like a tornado underwater, thrashing whatever they're holding on to. The purpose is brutal but effective, to rip off chunks of flesh or disorient prey until it drowns. The sheer force of it can tear limbs, break bones, and leave victims completely helpless. So what do you do if, God forbid, you ever find yourself caught in that spinning nightmare? Here's the counterintuitive tip. Sometimes the best move is to go limp. Sounds crazy, right? The natural instinct is to thrash, fight, and pull away. But that resistance actually gives the gator more leverage. By stiffening up or pulling back, you become a perfect anchor for the spin, which multiplies the damage. But if you go limp, relax your muscles, stop resisting, you can sometimes reduce the tearing force of the roll. It's not a guarantee, but survivors have reported that playing dead mid-roll lessened the damage enough for them to keep fighting later. Think of it like a seatbelt in a car crash. If you're rigid, the impact slams you harder. If you're loose, sometimes the force spreads out. It's the same idea underwater with an alligator. Of course, going limp isn't the end of the strategy. It just buys you precious seconds. The moment the roll slows or stops, that's when you fight back with everything you've got. Aim for the eyes, shove fingers into nostrils, gouge, kick, anything. Gators, like crocs, have armored bodies, but their eyes and throat are vulnerable. Now let's be clear, this isn't advice to just relax and it'll be fine. If an alligator has you in its jaws, you're in deep trouble no matter what.
But knowing that resistance can actually make the roll worse is a survival trick worth remembering. And here's another thing. Most gator attacks on humans happen because people underestimate them. They squat at the water's edge, they dangle hands while fishing, or they swim where they shouldn't. Gators are ambush hunters. They wait silently, often just a few feet from the surface, and explode forward at incredible speed. They can lunge from the water faster than a human can react. So prevention is always step one. But if prevention fails, remember this. Sometimes the best way to fight isn't to fight immediately. Sometimes survival comes from doing the exact opposite of what your instincts scream, going limp, absorbing the spin, then saving your strength for when you actually have a chance to escape. Here's my question for you. Do you think you'd have the nerve to go limp in the jaws of a gator? Or would your instincts take over and make you fight in a way that only makes the roll more deadly?
Nile crocodiles. When it comes to crocodiles, there's one species that takes the crown for sheer ferocity: the Nile crocodile. These monsters aren't just big, they're strategic. Unlike American alligators, which mostly go solo, Nile crocs actually coordinate ambushes. That's right, they don't just hunt like reptiles. They hunt like a pack of wolves disguised as giant armored lizards. Imagine you're by the riverbank in sub-Saharan Africa, maybe filling a jug with water or just crossing a shallow stretch. What you don't see are the dozen pairs of eyes just below the surface watching you. Nile crocs don't just sit there waiting for one unlucky victim to wander close. They work together. One croc might spook prey toward another, or several might block a river crossing, herding animals or humans right into the jaws of one of their buddies. It's terrifyingly efficient, and scientists are still debating how much communication is involved, but the behavior is undeniable. Now, let's clear up one of the longest-running myths you've probably heard. Run in zigzags if a croc chases you. Sounds clever, right? Like you're outsmarting a slow, lumbering beast. But here's the truth. Zigzagging is one of the worst things you could do. Why? Because crocodiles can actually sprint in short bursts faster than you might expect, up to 10 miles per hour, 16 kilometers per hour. And every sharp turn you make while zigzagging kills your own momentum. You're basically running an obstacle course against something that's built like a scaly bulldozer. Spoiler, you'll lose. The smarter move? Run straight and run hard, away from the water. Crocodiles are ambush predators, not marathon runners. Their power is in that explosive first strike, usually no more than 20 to 30 feet from the water's edge. Once you're beyond that range, their chances of catching you plummet. They won't chase you across open land because their bodies overheat and they burn energy too fast. They're designed for short, terrifying bursts of violence, not endurance. So, let's put this into a survival scenario. If a Nile crocodile lunges at you on land, don't waste time weaving left and right like you're in some cartoon. Instead, bolt straight away from the waterline. Every step you take in a straight line increases your survival odds. The croc might give up after a few feet once it realizes you're not worth the energy. Of course, the best survival trick is prevention. Don't hang around Nile croc territory in the first place. These creatures kill hundreds of people every year, far more than sharks or lions. They lurk in rivers, lakes, and watering holes, waiting for the smallest opportunity. The majority of victims? People crouching near the water, washing clothes, fishing, collecting water. Exactly the moment when you're least able to react. So let's bust the myth once and for all. Zigzagging? Hollywood nonsense. Straight line sprinting? That's your only shot. And don't forget, put as much distance as you can between you and that water, because the further you are, the safer you'll be. Here's a thought for you. Do you think you'd remember to run straight when panic hits? Or would instinct make you zigzag like everyone's been told since childhood?
Anacondas. All right, let's slither into the world of snakes for a minute, and not just any snake. We're talking about the anaconda, the heavyweight champion of constrictors. These giants can grow over 20 feet long, weigh hundreds of pounds, and pack the kind of muscle that can turn a grown human into a pancake in seconds. Unlike predators that kill with teeth or claws, anacondas use something way scarier, the squeeze. Here's the breakdown. Anacondas don't suffocate prey by literally crushing bones, though they can break ribs. Instead, they coil tightly and squeeze every time you exhale. Think about that. Every breath you let out, the snake tightens, leaving you less room to take in the next one. Within minutes, your body runs out of oxygen. It's not a dramatic bone-crunching death. It's a slow suffocation. And because these snakes are ambush hunters, you might not even see it coming. One second you're wading through murky water, the next you've got coils wrapping around you like a living straitjacket. So, is there a survival trick? Believe it or not, yes, though none of them are guaranteed. One often overlooked tactic is tucking your chin tight against your chest. Sounds simple, but here's why it matters. When a constrictor coils around you, it doesn't just squeeze your chest and ribs, it often presses against your throat. That pressure can collapse your airway even faster than the suffocation from chest compression. By tucking your chin, you create a small protective shield for your windpipe, buying yourself a few extra breaths. And in a fight against a snake this strong, every second counts. Now, let's be real. Anacondas, you're not going to outmuscle. These snakes can exert crushing forces over 90 pounds per square inch. That's like having a grown man standing on every square inch of your body. The average person has zero chance of prying them off once they're fully coiled. So the name of the game is survival hacks that extend your time. Chin tucked, conserving oxygen, staying calm enough not to hyperventilate. Because panicking means faster breathing, which means faster tightening. If you have a free hand, aim for the snake's sensitive spots, the eyes, the inside of the mouth. Even jabbing fingers into the nostrils can sometimes make it loosen just enough for you to slip out. Fire, knives, or even loud noises have also been reported to startle constrictors, though obviously you don't always have those handy when you're waist deep in the Amazon. And here's another hard truth. Anacondas usually strike in water. That makes everything harder. Your movement's slow, your leverage is gone, and your lungs are already fighting for air. Which is why that chin tuck trick, as tiny as it seems, can mean the difference between immediate blackout and precious extra moments to fight back. So, here's the question to imagine. You're in chest-deep swamp water, and suddenly you feel coils wrapping around you. Would you panic and flail, or would you have the presence of mind to tuck your chin, protect your airway, and buy yourself a few more seconds of life.
Pythons. If anacondas are the swamp giants of South America, then pythons are their heavyweight cousins ruling Africa and Asia. These snakes don't use venom. Instead, like anacondas, they rely on brute force, wrapping coils around prey and squeezing until there's no more breath left. But here's a weird survival trick that almost sounds too simple to be true. If a python has you, bite its tail. Sounds ridiculous, right? But here's the logic. When a python constricts, it's pouring all its focus and muscle strength into tightening its coils around you. Their brain isn't running complex battle strategies. It's running instinctive programs. The snake thinks, prey struggling, squeeze harder. But their tails, that's one of the more sensitive parts of their body. Survivors have reported that biting the tail or even applying intense pain to it can trigger a reflex that makes the snake loosen its coils. It's almost like pressing a reset button on the grip. Now let's set the scene. Imagine you're unlucky enough to stumble across a big python, maybe in rural India or out in the African savanna. These snakes can reach over 20 feet, just like anacondas, and weigh hundreds of pounds. If it decides to attack, you won't hear a hiss or warning rattle like some venomous snakes give. Instead, it launches silently, strikes with rows of backward-curved teeth, and instantly begins wrapping coils around you. Within seconds, your arms are pinned, your chest is compressed, and breathing becomes harder with each exhale. Panic sets in fast. Here's where that counterintuitive move comes into play. Instead of wasting all your energy trying to pry off coils, which you won't win against, you need to think differently. If your mouth is free, going for the tail might be your only shot. Even if it doesn't make the python fully let go, it can cause just enough slack to slip an arm free. And once you have a free arm, you can target the snake's head, eyes, or mouth. And it's not just biting. Sharp pain to the tail, stabbing, twisting, even crushing it under something heavy can create the same reaction. Snakes may look like living ropes, but they have nerves running the entire length of their body. Pain in the tail seems to be one of the few things that breaks their constriction autopilot. The biggest mistake most people make when imagining this scenario is assuming they could outstrength the snake. Pythons can apply crushing power that far exceeds what a human body can withstand. You're not going to peel them off like duct tape. Your only hope is using tricks that disrupt their instinct, like this bizarre but effective tail-biting tactic. And prevention? Just like with anacondas, stay cautious in snake territory. Most python attacks on humans happen when people stumble too close in the dark or when children are left near areas where snakes hunt goats or chickens. These snakes are ambush hunters, and once they strike, your options are slim. But if the unthinkable does happen, remember, sometimes survival comes down to weird, desperate moves. And in this case, that might mean using your teeth on a snake's tail. Not exactly glamorous, but hey, better alive and embarrassed than dead. Here's the question for you. In a real python squeeze, do you think you'd have the presence of mind to bite a snake's tail? Or would instinct tell you to keep fighting against the coils, even if it wasted your last breaths?
Monitor lizards. Most people don't think of lizards as apex predators, but if you've ever been face-to-face with a monitor lizard, you'll realize quickly they're no geckos on the wall. Some species, like the Komodo dragon, are famous for being massive, venomous, and terrifying. But even the smaller monitors, the kind you might encounter in Africa, Asia, or Australia, are armed with claws, teeth, and one very underrated weapon, their tail. If you've ever seen one get defensive, the first thing it does isn't necessarily to bite. Instead, it lashes that tail like a whip. And we're not talking about a soft smack here. We're talking about bone-bruising, skin-tearing blows that can knock smaller animals flat. Imagine a whip made of pure muscle and scales cracking against your leg. In fact, locals in some regions compare it to being hit with a bamboo pole, only worse because it can cut. Now here's the survival trick most people don't know. If a monitor lizard is tail lashing, the best way to neutralize that weapon is to grab it at the base, right where the tail meets the body. That's the control point. If you grab the middle or the tip, forget it. You're just holding a writhing whip. But if you get a grip near the root, you cut off its leverage. It's like grabbing a baseball bat at the handle versus halfway down the barrel. One gives you control, the other just guarantees pain. Of course, this isn't some casual move you'd use unless you absolutely had to. Monitors are not shy about switching from tail lashes to claws or teeth if they feel cornered. And their bite? While not as dangerous as a Komodo's venom-laced snap, many monitors still carry bacteria that can lead to nasty infections. But in a pinch, if you're too close to back away, controlling the tail is a huge step toward keeping yourself in one piece. Let's picture it. You are hiking through a scrubby forest in Sri Lanka, or maybe wandering near a riverbank in Indonesia, when suddenly you cross paths with a big water monitor. It feels threatened, rears up slightly, hisses, and starts swinging that tail like a medieval mace. You don't have room to retreat. Maybe you stumbled too close. If you freeze or try to block, that tail will batter you. But if you lunge for the base and clamp down, you've at least taken away its favorite opening move. From there, your job is to disengage fast. Monitors aren't usually looking for a fight to the death with a human. They just want space. This detail, the tail grab, is actually something that herpetologists and animal handlers know well. It's why they always secure the tail first when catching large monitors for relocation. Without that, you're risking broken skin, broken bones, or worse. So what's the takeaway? Monitor lizards aren't hunting humans, but they'll defend themselves fiercely if cornered. Respect their space, give them a wide berth, and you'll almost never have a problem. But if it comes down to a showdown and you can't escape, remember the tail trick. It's not about overpowering the lizard, it's about outsmarting its weapons. So let me throw it back to you. Would you be bold enough to grab the base of a lizard's thrashing tail? Or would you be too freaked out by the hissing claws and teeth coming at you?
Snapping turtles. When you think apex predator, your mind probably jumps to lions, sharks, or crocodiles, not turtles. But let me introduce you to the snapping turtle, the grumpy old man of freshwater swamps and rivers. These armored beasts might look slow and harmless at first, but don't be fooled. They're basically prehistoric tanks with jaws that function like bolt cutters. And here's the part that should really grab your attention. A big snapping turtle can bite clean through a broomstick. Yes, you heard that right. A broomstick, wood, not plastic. Their jaws are designed to crush through shells, fish, and even small mammals. So human fingers, toes, or calves, no contest. If you're wading barefoot in swamp water, you're basically offering up a buffet. Now, snapping turtles aren't out there actively hunting humans. They don't want you for dinner. But they are highly territorial, and they don't like being surprised. And where are they usually lurking? Right where you least expect them. Buried under mud, in shallow, murky water, or along riverbanks. You step too close, and bam, that mouth shoots out faster than you'd think possible for a creature that looks like it runs on grandpa speed. Their necks are like coiled springs, and they can extend them shockingly far, almost half the length of their body, to deliver a crushing snap. So here's the survival advice. Don't wade barefoot in swamp water, ever. I know it feels harmless, like dipping your toes in a pond on a hot day, but you never know what's under that muddy surface. Even if you don't meet a snapping turtle, you're still rolling the dice with leeches, sharp shells, or snakes. Shoes, preferably thick-soled ones, are your first line of defense. But let's imagine the worst case. Say you're careless and your foot lands right near one. What do? First, don't yank back wildly. That instinct can make the bite worse, tearing more flesh if it already latched on. If you're bitten, the turtle might not let go right away. Some people have compared it to being caught in a steel trap. The trick is to stay calm and avoid sudden movement, because panicking only gives the turtle more leverage. A firm push on the back of its head or carefully rotating its body can sometimes convince it to release. Here's another little-known danger. Snapping turtles often target fishing bait or small movements in the water, mistaking them for prey. That's why dangling fingers or toes while sitting on a dock isn't just relaxing, it's risky. And remember, their bite strength isn't just painful, it's crippling. A serious snap can take off chunks of flesh or even a toe. So the next time someone tells you turtles are slow and harmless, just remember this. Prehistoric doesn't mean peaceful. Snapping turtles have survived since the time of the dinosaurs for a reason. They're tough, efficient, and absolutely not to be underestimated. Here's a question for you. After hearing this, would you still dip your feet in swamp water on a hot day, or are you going to keep your toes as far away from the mud as possible?
Gila monsters are a bit of a different kind of challenge. These lizards thrive in the deserts of the American Southwest and known for being venomous. But you probably didn't know they clamp down with their jaws and hold on for 10 minutes or more. Unlike rattlesnakes, their venom is injected into the wound slowly. Most people don't realize the magnitude of their danger by their small stature. In fact, any attempt to escape their grip only makes it worse. Some of the old desert tricks will encourage a wooden stick to pry open the jaw hinges. This general metal from the desert lizard is proudly able to take its time and set its 10 toes deep down into this land, a kind of animal that doesn't need speed. Its whole strategy is patience. Clamp down, hold tight, and let the venom yield his work. If you were bitten by and you had to release for 10 minutes, do you think you would have the calmness to release, or would your panic make you waste energy fighting a battle you couldn't win?
Sea snakes. Let's leave the desert behind and dive into the ocean, where danger comes in sleek, slippery packages. You've probably heard of sea snakes, but here's something that might surprise you. They're some of the most venomous snakes on the planet, yet they're also among the least aggressive. In fact, most divers who encounter them report that sea snakes are curious, even playful, rather than hostile. They'll swim up, twist around you, maybe even poke their little heads into your mask like they're checking you out. Creepy? Definitely. But dangerous? Not unless you make one feel trapped. And that's the key. Sea snakes rarely bite unless they feel cornered or grabbed. If you're swimming freely and just let them go about their business, odds are you'll be fine. But if you accidentally pin one against coral, step on one in shallow water, or God forbid try to handle it, that's when the fangs come out. And here's the scary part. Their venom is incredibly potent, sometimes dozens of times more toxic than a cobra's. The only saving grace is that they usually inject very little venom, and actual bites to humans are rare. But what if you are unlucky enough to get too close? Here's a survival trick you might not know. Flipping a sea snake upside down can make it passive. For reasons that still fascinate scientists, turning them belly up triggers a sort of freeze response. Divers and snake handlers have noted that when inverted, sea snakes stop wriggling and go still, almost like they've been hypnotized. It's not a permanent solution, but it can buy you time to gently move the snake away without provoking it further. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to go around flipping sea snakes like pancakes if you see one. That's a last resort move for people who know what they're doing. But it's useful knowledge if, say, a snake gets tangled in your fishing net, or one is wrapped around your leg in shallow water. Instead of panicking and swatting, which almost guarantees a defensive bite, inverting it might be the safer play. The bigger takeaway here is that sea snakes are more misunderstood than malicious. Unlike sharks, which sometimes mistake humans for prey, sea snakes never see you as food. They're just curious and sometimes clumsy. Most attacks are really just defensive nips from snakes that felt trapped. And considering their fangs are tiny and often can't even pierce thick wetsuits, many encounters end without serious harm. Still, respect is everything. If you're diving in the Indo-Pacific, Australia, or the Indian Ocean, basically Sea Snake Central, remember, don't grab, don't trap, and don't panic. If one approaches, stay calm, let it circle, and it'll usually drift away on its own. So here's my question for you. If you were snorkeling and a highly venomous sea snake curled right around your arm, would you stay calm enough to try flipping it belly up? Or would the panic of knowing its venom could kill you win out?
Great whites. All right, let's talk about the big one. The shark that Hollywood turned into every beachgoer's nightmare. The great white. Now, here's the thing most people get wrong. Great whites aren't mindless killing machines cruising around looking for humans to snack on. In fact, most of the time when a shark attacks a person, it's not an attack at all. It's an investigation. Great whites don't have hands, so when they want to figure out what you are, they use their mouth. Unfortunately for us, their version of just checking things out can mean a 15-foot animal taking a test bite. Not great for your day. But before the bite, there's usually something else, the bump. Sharks are curious creatures. They'll often give what's called an investigative bump, nudging a swimmer, surfer, or diver with their snout to see if you're worth more attention. Think of it like a cat pawing at a toy to see if it moves. The difference, of course, is that a cat paw doesn't come with rows of serrated teeth attached. Now, here's where survival technique comes in. If you're in the water and a great white is circling, going vertical can reduce your chance of being mistaken for prey. Picture yourself lying flat on the surface. From below, you look a lot like a seal or sea lion, which are shark favorites. But if you shift into a vertical position, treading water with your head up, you suddenly look less like dinner and more like an odd floating object. Sharks aren't out there craving awkward-looking humans. They're looking for blubbery, calorie-rich meals. Divers have long known this trick. In fact, many recommend staying vertical and keeping eye contact with the shark. Why? Because sharks prefer ambush. They like sneaking up on prey from below or behind. If they realize you see them, and especially if you're facing them, they often lose interest. You're no longer an easy target. And let's talk about what not to do. Splashing around like crazy. Splashing signals distress, which in the shark's mind equals vulnerability. That's why panicking in the water can actually increase your risk. Staying calm, keeping movements controlled, and presenting yourself upright gives you a much better chance of making the shark decide, not worth it. Of course, none of this makes an encounter with a great white less terrifying. Imagine being in deep blue water, and suddenly that massive gray shape emerges, circling with slow, deliberate movements. Your heart would be pounding so hard you'd swear the shark could hear it. But in that exact moment, knowledge is power. Knowing that you should stay vertical, keep facing it, and avoid frantic movements might be the difference between a close call and becoming a headline. Here's the wildest part. Most great white attacks end after a single bite. They often spit humans out once they realize we're not tasty seals. The tragedy is that even a sampled bite from a shark that size can cause catastrophic injuries, which makes prevention, not looking like prey in the first place, absolutely essential. So let me ask you, if you were floating out there and a great white gave you a bump, do you think you'd have the nerves to stay vertical and still? Or would every instinct in your body scream at you to thrash and swim for shore?
Bull sharks. When most people think about shark danger, their brain jumps straight to the ocean. Surfboards, waves, maybe the shadow of a fin slicing through the water. But here is a plot twist that catches a lot of people off guard. Some of the most dangerous sharks don't even need the ocean. Enter the bull shark, the tough guy of the shark world. Unlike great whites that stick to salt water, bull sharks can cruise right into rivers and lakes because their bodies are uniquely built to handle both saltwater and freshwater. That means danger can follow you even when you think you're far from the beach. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're swimming in a murky river, miles inland, maybe even hundreds of miles from the coast. You'd never expect a shark to be there, right? But bull sharks have been caught as far as 1,000 miles up the Mississippi River in the United States. And they regularly patrol rivers in Australia, South America, and Africa. They've even been spotted in Lake Nicaragua, which is connected to the ocean by freshwater rivers. So yeah, these guys don't play by the rules. Now here's why that makes them especially risky. River water is usually muddy. Visibility is terrible. That means you can't see the shark, and the shark can't clearly see you. Most shark attacks on humans are cases of mistaken identity. In clear blue ocean water, a shark might recognize you're not a seal or a fish before taking a bite. But in murky rivers, that margin for error shrinks dramatically. If you're splashing around, to a bull shark you look like an injured fish, and they'll test first, ask questions later. Bull sharks are also known for being bold. They don't shy away from shallow water, and they're far more territorial than other sharks. Surfers and swimmers in estuaries, those brackish mixing zones where rivers meet the sea, are actually in one of the riskiest environments on Earth for shark encounters. People think of the open ocean as the scary place, but statistically, shallow coastal waters and rivers are often more dangerous than the deep sea. So what's the survival takeaway here? Awareness. If you're swimming, fishing, or wading in rivers connected to the sea, especially in tropical or subtropical regions, you need to assume bull sharks could be around. Don't swim at dawn or dusk. That's prime hunting time. Don't splash excessively. And for the love of safety, don't swim with open wounds. Blood carries downstream fast, and bull sharks have an excellent sense of smell. And here's a final thought. Bull sharks are sometimes called the pit bulls of the ocean because of their stocky build and aggressive nature. Combine that with their ability to show up where you least expect them, and you've got one of the few sharks that truly deserve their scary reputation. So let me ask you, if you were offered a choice between swimming in the deep blue ocean or taking a dip in a muddy tropical river, which one would you honestly feel safer in, knowing bull sharks might be waiting upriver?
Tiger sharks. If great whites are the headline act and bull sharks are the street fighters, tiger sharks are the garbage disposals of the shark world. These guys will eat, or at least bite, just about anything. License plates, cans, clothes, sea turtles, even tires have been found in their stomachs. That's why divers sometimes call them the garbage cans of the sea. They're not picky. If it fits in their mouth, they'll give it a try. And that makes them unpredictable. Now here's a detail that a lot of people don't realize. Tiger sharks are especially drawn to shiny jewelry. Why? Because from their perspective, that sparkle looks a lot like the flash of fish scales underwater. Imagine you're a tiger shark gliding along the reef. You see a glittering flicker in the distance. That could be a fat, juicy fish catching the light as it darts around. You don't wait to investigate. You go in for a bite. Except in this case, it's not a fish. It's a swimmer wearing a gold bracelet or a diver with a shiny dive knife clipped to their belt. That little mistake can end very badly. In fact, many safety guidelines for divers and snorkelers in tiger shark territory specifically say, leave the jewelry at home. No necklaces, no watches, no dangling shiny stuff. Even polished gear can catch the sunlight and mimic the flash of prey. And in murky water or low visibility, the shark doesn't take time to analyze. They lunge first, figure it out later. The tiger shark's reputation as a garbage eater also means you can't rely on the mistaken identity defense as much as with great whites. A great white might bite once, realize you're not a seal, and let go. But tiger sharks, they'll often just keep chewing because they're wired to consume
a wide variety of things. That's what makes them so successful in the wild, and so dangerous to humans who end up in their path. Picture yourself snorkeling in Hawaii, one of the tiger shark hotspots. You're drifting along, watching the reef, and suddenly, a massive striped shark, they're called tiger sharks because of those faint vertical stripes, swims into view. Your heart rate skyrockets. Now imagine you forgot to take off your wedding ring, and it's catching the light every time you move your hand. To the shark, that's a dinner bell ringing. This is why experienced divers keep their hands tucked in and their gear matte or covered. So how do you survive a tiger shark encounter? Step 1 is prevention. No shiny stuff, no splashing, no dangling fish if you've been spearfishing. Step 2, keep facing the shark and stay calm. Like most sharks, they prefer surprise attacks, and if you show them you see them, they may think twice. Step 3, if it comes close, use your fins, camera, or spear to gently push it away. Direct contact with your hand is a bad idea. Tiger sharks are incredible, powerful predators, but most bites happen because we accidentally advertise ourselves as food. Which makes me wonder, if you were about to go on a tropical dive trip, would you be able to strip away every shiny item you own? Or would you risk wearing that sentimental bracelet, hoping a tiger shark won't mistake it for a snack?
Orcas. Now let's move from sharks to the wolves of the sea, orcas, also known as killer whales. Don't let the name whale fool you, though. Orcas are actually the largest members of the dolphin family, and they're some of the smartest, most ruthless predators on Earth. These animals don't just hunt. They strategize, coordinate, and even seem to enjoy the process. Here's the creepy part. Orcas often play with their prey before killing it. Imagine being a seal on an ice floe. A group of orcas swims up, and instead of immediately eating you, they generate waves to knock you off the ice, only to let you scramble back up again. Then they repeat it, over and over. Sometimes they'll toss prey into the air with their powerful tails, or drag it along like a toy. To us, it looks cruel. To them, it's a mix of practice, bonding, and maybe entertainment. So where does survival fit into this? Well, there are rare cases where humans have found themselves in the crosshairs. Swimmers, divers, or even surfers. And some survival experts suggest that remaining motionless can sometimes cause orcas to lose interest. Remember, these animals are highly intelligent. They don't attack humans for food. There's no record of a wild orca eating a person. When they do interact with people, it's usually curiosity or playfulness. But playfulness from a 6-ton predator with teeth designed to rip apart whales is still terrifying. The idea is that if you thrash around, you make yourself more interesting, more like prey. If you freeze, on the other hand, you might break the cycle. Orcas are used to prey struggling, panicking, fleeing. If you don't do that, you don't fit the script they're used to, and sometimes they'll just let you be. Think of it like playing with a toy that suddenly stops moving. The fun is gone. It sounds simple in theory, but imagine the reality. You're in the open water, and a pod of orcas starts circling you.
They're massive, black and white torpedoes cutting through the water with eerie grace. One nudges you, another dives under you, a third surfaces close enough that you feel the spray from its blowhole. Every instinct in your body screams at you to swim, to escape. But your best bet might actually be to stay perfectly still, heart hammering in your chest, and hope they lose interest. It's worth remembering, though, orcas don't see humans as food. The real danger is being in the wrong place at the wrong time, especially near their hunting grounds. Surfers lying flat on boards can sometimes resemble seals, their favorite snack. Kayakers or swimmers in seal-rich waters also risk being investigated. And once you're part of the game, it's not up to you when it ends. So here's the chilling thought. What would you do if you were floating in the ocean and an orca came right up, eye to eye, just inches away? Would you have the nerve to stay still and trust it to swim off? Or would panic take over and turn you into their next toy?
Hammerheads. Okay, let's talk about one of the strangest-looking predators in the ocean, hammerhead sharks. With those wide, flat heads that look like someone pressed their face with a rolling pin, they almost seem cartoonish. But don't be fooled. Hammerheads are sleek, powerful hunters, and when you see one up close, you realize they're every bit as intimidating as their great white cousins. Now here's a survival tip that sounds almost too simple to be true. Hammerheads dislike bubbles. Divers have noticed that when confronted with these sharks, steadily exhaling and releasing a curtain of bubbles can actually make them back off. It's not that the bubbles hurt them. It's just that hammerheads are cautious by nature, and they don't seem to like swimming straight into a fizzing wall of air. Why would that work? Well, hammerheads rely heavily on their sensory systems to detect prey. That big hammer on their head is packed with special sensors called ampullae of Lorenzini, tiny gel-filled pores that pick up the faint electrical signals given off by fish. Bubbles, on the other hand, are noisy, confusing, and don't fit into the pattern of normal prey behavior. A steady stream of bubbles might signal, "I'm not food, I'm something weird." And sharks don't waste time on weird. For divers, this trick is especially valuable because hammerheads are often encountered in groups. Unlike the lone great white that might glide by, hammerheads sometimes school in large numbers, dozens, circling in eerie synchrony. It's an awe-inspiring sight, but it can also be nerve-wracking. Knowing that you can use your own breath as a kind of shield gives you at least a little control in an otherwise helpless situation. Imagine you're down at 40 feet, scuba tank strapped on, and suddenly 3 hammerheads peel away from the group and start coming closer. Your pulse jumps. You grip your regulator tighter. Your first instinct might be to hold your breath, but that's the worst thing you could do. Instead, you remember the trick. You exhale slowly, steadily, releasing a curtain of silver bubbles that rise up between you and them. The sharks hesitate, circle wider, and eventually veer away. That moment of relief is something divers never forget.
Of course, this doesn't mean hammerheads are out to get you in the first place. Attacks on humans are extremely rare. They're curious animals, not reckless ones. But curiosity from a 13-foot predator is still nothing to take lightly. The real danger comes if you look like struggling prey, splashing, panicking, darting away. Calm, steady, deliberate movements plus the bubble trick make you much less interesting. It's funny, isn't it? Out of all the high-tech survival gear in the world, sometimes your best defense against an apex predator is something as simple as your breath. But it works. And in the ocean, every little edge matters. So here's my question for you. If you were scuba diving and a hammerhead swam straight toward you, do you think you could keep calm enough to blow a steady stream of bubbles? Or would you instinctively hold your breath and make yourself an easier target?
Reef sharks. Let's move into shallower waters. Coral reefs. Beautiful, colorful, and full of life, but also home to reef sharks. These sharks aren't as big as great whites or tiger sharks, but don't let their smaller size fool you. A 6-foot predator with sharp teeth is still a serious threat, especially if you cross a line most people don't even realize exists. Here's the thing. Reef sharks usually don't go after humans unless they feel cornered. They're naturally skittish compared to the big ocean hunters. If they sense they have space to retreat, they'll almost always choose escape over conflict. But if you block them in, or if a group of divers closes them off against coral walls, that's when things can escalate fast. And when they do attack, it's often lightning quick and aggressive, more "get out of my space" than "I want to eat you." This is why dive instructors have a golden rule. Always leave the shark a lane of escape. Imagine you're in a hallway and someone's blocking both ends. You'd start to feel trapped, right? Maybe even lash out if they came closer. That's basically how reef sharks feel when humans unintentionally corner them. They need an exit strategy. If they don't see one, you've just gone from harmless stranger to immediate threat. Picture the scene. You're snorkeling over a reef, and a reef shark glides out from under a ledge. It circles slowly, checking you out. Instead of panicking and flailing, you stay calm and watch its movements. You notice it keeps glancing toward an opening between coral heads, its exit. If you keep that opening clear, chances are the shark will eventually slip through and vanish. But if you block it, even by accident, you might trigger the exact behavior you're trying to avoid. What's fascinating is that most reef shark bites happen when humans break this rule. Spearfishers, for example, often end up in trouble because they're carrying freshly killed fish, and cornered sharks see both a meal and a threat. Add in the fact that blood in the water amps up shark agitation, and you've got a recipe for an aggressive encounter. But for swimmers and divers who respect space and give sharks a way out, encounters are usually calm, even awe-inspiring. Here's something else worth noting. Reef sharks often give warnings before striking. They'll hunch their backs, lower their pectoral fins, and make exaggerated, jerky swimming motions. It's shark body language for "back off." If you see that, it's your cue to ease up, clear the escape lane, and let them move on. So the big lesson here,
Respect territory, respect body language, and always remember that no matter how small a shark seems compared to its bigger cousins, in close quarters, it has the home field advantage. The smartest move is to give it options, not force it into a corner. And that brings me to you. If you found yourself snorkeling and a reef shark suddenly appeared, would you have the awareness to check whether you're blocking its escape route, or would you be too focused on your own fear to notice?
Wetsuit color matters. All right, here's a detail that sounds almost like a myth, but it's been talked about by divers, surfers, and even the military for decades. Sharks are more attracted to certain colors, especially yellow. In fact, divers used to call it yum yum yellow. Catchy, right? But not so funny if you're the one in the neon wetsuit bobbing around in shark territory. Why yellow? Well, sharks don't see color the way humans do, but they are excellent at detecting contrast. In clear blue or green water, a bright yellow object pops like a neon sign. To a shark scanning the waves, that flash of contrast is interesting. And in nature, interesting usually means worth investigating. Unfortunately, sharks investigate with their mouths. Now, this doesn't mean sharks are swimming around with fashion preferences. They're not out there going, "Oh, hey, love that color, let's bite it." What's really happening is that yellow, white, and other bright shades look more like distressed prey against the backdrop of the sea. Fish often flash silver or light hues when they're injured, and that's like a trigger for predators. A big splash of yellow on your wetsuit, fins, or gear can mimic that signal. The U.S. Navy even studied this back in the day when they were testing survival suits for pilots who ejected over the ocean. The results? Bright yellow suits were spotted faster by rescuers, but they also seemed to draw more attention from sharks. It was a trade-off. Visibility for humans, visibility for predators. That's why many modern wetsuits now lean toward darker shades like black, blue, or camel patterns. The idea is to blend in with the water instead of standing out. Picture this. You're diving with a group of friends. Most of them are in standard black wetsuits, but one person shows up with bright yellow fins. Guess which pair of feet the curious reef shark swims toward first? It's not guaranteed danger, but it's enough of a pattern that seasoned divers and instructors warn against flashy colors in shark-heavy waters. Now, here's the interesting flip side. Some people intentionally wear high-visibility colors for safety. If you're a snorkeler who worries more about boat traffic than sharks, bright fins can make you easier to spot from the surface. So it really comes down to where you are and what risk you're trying to minimize. Still, if you're in a known shark hotspot, common sense says ditch the yum-yum yellow and stick with muted tones. Sharks are opportunistic. Why make yourself the most noticeable option in the water? So let me ask you, if you were about to buy new diving gear, would you go for the flashy bright set that looks amazing on Instagram? Or play it safe with the boring black, knowing it might make you invisible to something with 300 teeth?
Eye contact with sharks. Here's a trick that feels more like something out of a movie than real survival advice, but seasoned divers swear by it. Holding eye contact with a shark can sometimes stop it from coming closer. Sounds crazy, right? But it makes sense once you think about how predators, both in the ocean and on land, prefer to operate. Most apex predators like the element of surprise. Wildcats stalk birds. Wolves flank deer. Sharks circle and sneak up from below. The second they realize their target sees them, the advantage is gone. That's why eye contact can be such a powerful deterrent. To a shark, your eyes say, "I see you, I know you are there, and you're not going to catch me off guard." Divers often compare it to house cats. If you've ever locked eyes with a cat that's crouched and ready to pounce, you've probably noticed how it sometimes stops, rethinks, and even backs off. Sharks, in their own way, react similarly. They'd much rather go after something distracted, unaware, or panicked than something that seems alert and ready. Now, this doesn't mean you should stare down every shark like you're trying to win a staring contest. What divers recommend is controlled awareness. If a shark is circling, you keep turning to face it. If it moves to your left, you pivot. If it swings behind you, you twist. It's about showing the shark that you're tracking its movements. No blind spots, no surprise angles. Sharks quickly lose interest when they realize they can't sneak up on you. Picture yourself floating mid-water and a reef shark starts circling. Your first instinct might be to bolt for the surface, but instead you hold your ground and lock eyes every time it passes. The shark closes the gap, swings wide, then tests again. Each time you turn to face it. Slowly it peels away, maybe deciding that you're too much trouble. Meanwhile, your heart is pounding like a drum, but your cool-headed awareness might have just saved you from a close call. There are even stories from professional divers of great whites being deterred this way. These massive predators, 15, 18 feet long, circling divers only to break off once they realized the human wasn't acting like prey. Again, sharks don't want a fair fight. They want an easy meal. Eye contact signals the exact opposite. You're not easy, you're paying attention. But here's the flip side. Maintaining eye contact is easier said than done. Imagine staring into those cold, black eyes while every cell in your body is screaming to swim for safety. Could you keep your composure, or would you panic and look away, which might be the exact moment the shark makes its move? So let me ask you this. If you were face to face with a shark in open water, could you hold that gaze steady and calm, or would the instinct to flee take over, making you look more like prey than you'd ever want to?
Whale sharks. When people picture dangerous sharks, they imagine great whites tearing seals apart, or tiger sharks lurking near surfers. But here's the twist. The largest shark in the world, the whale shark, isn't a man-eater at all. In fact, they're filter feeders, swallowing plankton, krill, and tiny fish with their enormous mouths wide open like living vacuum cleaners. But here's the part that surprises a lot of divers. Whale sharks can still be dangerous, not because they want to hurt you, but because of how massive and powerful they are. Picture a creature up to 40 feet long, weighing as much as a school bus, sweeping that giant tail back and forth. Even a single flick could knock a diver unconscious. There's also another little-known hazard, the suction zone around their mouths. When whale sharks feed, they create powerful currents as water rushes in. It's like standing too close to a jet intake. Divers who've gotten careless near the head have been pulled off balance and dragged dangerously close. Not because the shark wanted to eat them,
but just because they got caught in the physics of a filter-feeding giant. That's why seasoned divers have a rule. Always stay above the dorsal fin line. If you're level with the shark's belly or head, you're in the danger zone, where suction and tail sweeps happen. But above the fin, that's the safe observation spot. You can glide along, watch them peacefully feeding, and not risk getting pulled or crushed. There are actual reports of divers getting slammed into reefs or even into the shark's rough, sandpaper-like skin just by being in the wrong spot. And while whale sharks aren't aggressive, their sheer size means even an accidental bump can leave serious scrapes, bruises, or broken gear. Now imagine this. You're in crystal-clear tropical water, watching one of these gentle giants slowly rise beneath you. Its mouth opens wider than your entire body. You're mesmerized, holding your camera steady, when suddenly you feel a pull, water tugging you toward that cavernous mouth. You kick hard, push upward, and break out of the suction just in time. No malice, no intent, just physics and scale. And that's the eerie part. Sometimes the most harmless creatures are the ones that can accidentally kill you. A whale shark doesn't even notice you're there. To it, you're just another bubble in the water. But if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're the one who ends up in danger. So let me put this to you. If you had the chance to swim alongside the biggest fish on Earth, would you be able to resist the urge to get close to that massive, awe-inspiring mouth? Or would curiosity pull you right into the very danger you're supposed to avoid?
Barracudas. Now, if sharks are the big, looming danger of the ocean, then barracudas are like the underwater sprinters with a bad temper. Sleek, silver, and shaped like underwater missiles, they're built for one thing: speed. A barracuda can go from stillness to striking in a flash, faster than you can even register what's happening. But here's the surprising part. They're not usually after people. Most barracuda bites happen because of one simple mistake: shiny objects. To a barracuda, a glint of silver in the water doesn't look like a watch or a knife. It looks like the flash of a fleeing fish. And when their hunting instinct kicks in, they're already mid-strike before realizing you're not dinner. Spearfishes know this risk all too well. There are countless stories of divers surfacing with a knife strapped to their leg or a string of fish hanging by their side, only for a barracuda to come darting in like lightning. Sometimes they don't even go for the fish. They go straight for the metal glint of the knife handle. Imagine being underwater and seeing a blur of silver teeth streaking at your thigh, not because you did anything wrong, but because your gear looked tasty for a half second. And here's something most people don't realize. A barracuda's teeth aren't just sharp. They're razor blades designed to cut clean through flesh and bone. They don't chew, they slice. In fact, the way their jaws are built, they can chop a fish clean in half in a single bite. So even a mistaken identity net can leave a diver with a very real, very nasty wound. The trick, if you're in barracuda territory, keep the shiny stuff out of sight. That means no jewelry,
no chrome gear dangling around. And if you're spearfishing, don't let your catch dangle behind you like a moving buffet. Experienced divers carry their fish up quickly or stash them in sealed bags because barracudas are notorious for snatching prey right off the line. Picture this. You're snorkeling in crystal waters, sunlight breaking into silver streaks all around you. Suddenly, from the corner of your eye, a shape darts in, a long silver predator, teeth bared, circling your watch wrist like it's the only thing in the ocean. You yank your hand back just in time, heart pounding. It wasn't after you. It was after the sparkle. But tell me, in that split second, would you even care about the difference? And that's what makes barracudas so unnerving. Unlike sharks, they don't give you a bump or a test first. They strike like a knife in the dark, and by the time you realize what's happening, the damage is already done. They're not out to hunt you, but if you bring the wrong accessory into their world, you just volunteer to play decoy fish. So here's the question. Next time you're out in the ocean, would you feel comfortable leaving every piece of jewelry, every shiny gadget behind, or would that tiny bit of vanity be the one thing that gets a barracuda's attention?
Eagles. When most people think of eagles, they imagine majestic birds soaring high above mountains, symbols of freedom and power. But let's not forget something crucial. Eagles are apex predators. They're not out there for poetry. They're out there to hunt. And one of the most unsettling facts, eagles often aim for the eyes of larger animals, including humans, when they feel threatened. It sounds like something from a horror movie, but it makes perfect sense in nature. Eyes are soft, exposed, and vulnerable. While most predators go for the throat, eagles know that blinding their target gives them a massive advantage. Hunters and farmers in parts of the world have long told stories about eagles diving straight for their faces, talons spread wide, not to kill outright, but to disable. Think about it. An animal without sight is helpless, and the eagle knows that. Now, here's the interesting survival trick. If an eagle decides to test you with a dive, raising something above your head, like a stick, a hat, or even your hands, can throw it off. Eagles aren't mindless. They track movement and aim for the most obvious target zone. By giving them a decoy above your actual head, you can redirect that terrifying precision strike away from your real eyes. Some shepherds in Central Asia, where golden eagles are common, even carry long sticks for exactly this reason. It's not about fighting the bird. It's about confusing it long enough to avoid those talons slashing across your face. To give you an idea of how serious this is, let's talk about their weapons. An eagle's talons aren't just claws. They're like hooked knives. The grip strength of a large eagle, like the harpy or golden eagle, can crush bones. Now, combine that with a dive speed of 150 miles per hour, and suddenly you're looking at an attack that feels more like getting hit with a razor-sharp sledgehammer. One strike is all it takes to leave you permanently scarred, or worse. Imagine you're hiking through open country, and you notice a massive shadow circling above you. At first, you admire it. Who wouldn't? Then, without warning, it tucks its wings and drops like a missile straight toward you. Your heart races.
Instinct says to duck, but instead you throw your arms up, waving your trekking pole above your head. At the last second, the eagle veers off, its talons slashing air where your face used to be. It wasn't scared. It was recalculating. Maybe you weren't such an easy target after all. That's the creepy beauty of eagle encounters. They don't just rely on brute force. They use precision and psychology. They test weaknesses. They strike at the most vulnerable part of you. And the fact that all you have to do is raise a stick above your head to fool one of nature's deadliest hunters, that says a lot about how survival sometimes depends less on strength and more on simple, clever tricks. So let me ask you this. If you were caught in eagle country with nothing but your bare hands, would you remember to raise them high to save your eyes? Or would instinct make you duck and expose your face to the strike?
Condors. Condors are some of the largest flying birds on Earth. Their wingspan can reach nearly 10 feet across, which means when one of these giants glides overhead, you can actually hear the rush of air, almost like a low hum. It's awe-inspiring, and also a little unnerving once you remember that condors are scavengers with the strength and courage to test live prey if they think they have an opportunity. Now, here's the part that doesn't get talked about much. Condors rarely go after groups of people. They're cautious opportunists. Their survival strategy is all about calculating risk. And one human might look vulnerable, but several standing close together? That looks like a confusing, intimidating wall of potential danger. That's where the trick comes in. If a condor starts circling low, the best thing you can do is group up and make yourself appear larger. Stretch out your arms, spread jackets wide, even raise sticks or trekking poles if you have them. Suddenly, you don't look like one lonely target. You look like a creature as big, if not bigger, than the condor itself. And size is something birds respect in the wild. Think about it. Condors, like most scavengers, don't want to fight. They thrive by conserving energy, finding weak or dead animals to feed on. An injured condor is a doomed condor. So if you appear big, strong, and united, you've basically convinced the bird that you're not worth its time. Let's set the scene. You're hiking in the Andes, where Andean condors soar across mountain cliffs like prehistoric pterodactyls. One starts circling lower and lower, its eyes fixed on you. You realize it's curious, maybe testing whether you're in trouble or alone. If you were crouched down, tired, or separated from your group, you might look like a potential meal. But instead, you rise tall, spread your arms wide, and wave. Your friend does the same. To that condor, you've just transformed from a tired hiker into a towering giant with strange, threatening limbs. The bird veers off, choosing to search for an easier target elsewhere. There's a lesson in this. Predators and scavengers often make their choices based on illusion. Appear weak, and they may test you. Appear strong and unified, and they'll think twice. This is why throughout history, humans have learned to use posture, noise, and numbers as survival tactics. It's not about fighting the condor. It's about convincing it you're not worth its time. Here's the eerie part, though. Condors have been seen following lone travelers for miles, just waiting for them to collapse or show weakness.
Imagine hiking alone and realizing that the shadow above has been with you all afternoon, not hunting yet, but patiently calculating. It's a reminder that sometimes survival isn't about outrunning danger. It's about outlasting its patience. So here's the question for you. If you were caught alone in Condor country, would you remember to stretch yourself wide and bluff your size? Or would you stay small and quiet, hoping the bird wasn't sizing you up for later?
Owls. Owls might not seem like apex predators in the same way lions or sharks do, but in their own world, they absolutely are. They're the kings of the night sky, built with some of the most finely tuned hunting tools in the animal kingdom. And one of the creepiest things about them? They can attack you without you hearing a single sound. Unlike hawks or eagles, owls have specialized feathers with tiny serrations along the edges. These break up air turbulence, which means when they dive, there's no whoosh of wings. To prey on the ground, a mouse, a rabbit, or even a distracted person, the strike feels like it came out of nowhere. People who've been hit describe it as a sudden impact, followed by sharp talons digging into their scalp before they even knew the bird was there. And owls don't just swoop at random. They tend to go for the head, especially if they feel you're in their territory, near their nest, or too close to fledglings. In fact, many hikers and joggers have reported owl strikes coming from directly behind, like nature's stealth attack. By the time you turn around, it's already too late. The talons are in your hair, and you're swinging wildly, trying to get the bird off. Here's the simple but clever trick people in owl-heavy areas have used. Head coverings. A hat, hood, or even just a scarf wrapped over your head can make all the difference. Owls target soft, exposed spots, and a covered head not only makes you look less vulnerable, but it also gives them less traction if they do strike. Some researchers who study owls in the field even wear hard hats, because once an owl fixates on your head, they'll keep coming back for repeat hits. Picture this. You're walking home late at night through a quiet forest trail. The moonlight is just enough to see the outline of trees, but you feel like you're being watched. Suddenly, without warning, something slams into the back of your head. You stumble forward, heart racing, and whip around, but there's nothing there, just silence. Then a faint shape perches on branch above, staring at you with those glowing yellow eyes. You realize it wasn't just an accident. The owl chose you, and it might not be done. The unsettling part is that most owl attacks aren't about hunting humans. They're territorial defense. To the owl, you're just a bigger animal trespassing in the wrong place at the wrong time. But to you, the effect is terrifying. An invisible strike from behind, no warning, no sound. So, the next time you're out in owl country, ask yourself this. Would you be the one striding confidently with your head uncovered, thinking nothing could touch you? Or would you be the cautious type, pulling up a hood, just in case those watchful, silent wings are already tracking you from the trees?
Vultures. When most people picture vultures, they think of them circling above a desert, waiting for something to die. And that's mostly true. Vultures are scavengers.
masters of cleaning up what other predators leave behind. But here's the detail that gives people chills. If a human looks too weak, too still, or too close to death, vultures sometimes won't wait. They may mob the living, testing to see if you're really gone. Now, it's not common for vultures to attack outright. They're not built like eagles or hawks. Their beaks and talons aren't designed to kill strong, healthy animals. But what they do have is numbers, patience, and persistence. If you collapse in open country, especially in places like sub-Saharan Africa or high desert plateaus, vultures may gather and slowly close in. And here's the creepy part. Once one bird starts pecking, the rest follow, and suddenly you're surrounded by a mob that mistakes weakness for opportunity. So what's the trick? Feigning strength. Even if you're exhausted or injured, the best move is to wave your arms, shout, and make yourself look alert. Vultures are smart, and they're watching for cues. If you show energy, even just for a short burst, they'll second-guess the idea that you're edible. They don't want to waste time pecking at something that might suddenly fight back. There are accounts from explorers, stranded travelers, and even soldiers that highlight this eerie behavior. People report lying down for a rest, only to wake up surrounded by vultures, some bold enough to creep within a few feet. One man in the Sahara described being too weak to walk, yet when he forced himself to sit up and wave, the birds retreated instantly, only to circle back the moment he slumped again. Picture it for yourself. You're dehydrated, baking under the sun, body begging for rest. A shadow passes over you, then another. You tilt your head up and see dark wings cutting across the sky. Within an hour, there are half a dozen perched nearby, eyes fixed on you. They're not attacking yet, but they're waiting, calculating. And you realize, in their eyes, you're already halfway to a carcass. That's what makes vultures so unsettling. They don't need to strike with speed or power. They just need to wait until you can't fake strength anymore. And when that moment comes, they descend in numbers you can't possibly fight off. The lesson here is simple but chilling. Sometimes survival isn't about outrunning or outmuscling an apex predator. Sometimes it's about bluffing your way past opportunists, convincing them you've still got enough fire in you to make the meal not worth it. So let me throw this back to you. If you were stranded and surrounded by vultures, would you be able to summon the energy to wave and shout just to keep them away? Or would exhaustion betray you, letting them test the line between the living and the dead? Kites. If eagles are the kings of the skies, and vultures are the patient scavengers, then kites are the clever thieves. These medium-sized raptors have made a reputation for themselves not by kicking down prey with brute force, but by swooping in and snatching food straight out of people's hands, or even mouths. In India especially, this isn't just legend, it's an everyday reality. Black kites are so common in cities that locals often warn newcomers, don't walk around holding uncovered food. If you're strolling through Delhi with a piece of fried bread in your hand, chances are you'll suddenly hear a rush of wings, feel a sharp tug, and then your snack is gone. And the crazy part? The kite won't even slow down. It'll rip the food free in midair and vanish back into the sky before you even register what happened. This behavior isn't new. For centuries, villagers have known kites as bold food snatchers. Some festivals and markets even have warnings posted, reminding people to keep food covered because of these winged bandits. And over generations, locals developed a simple trick to keep them at bay: waving clothes. Whether it's a scarf, shawl, or just a scrap of fabric, raising it above your head and flicking it around creates enough movement to confuse and deter kites. They rely on quick, direct strikes, and anything unpredictable in their path makes them think twice. But here's the unnerving detail. Kites don't just steal snacks. They've been known to grab food directly out of cooking pots, snatch fish from drying racks, and even go after offerings placed at temples. Some reports tell of them striking so close to people's faces that talons leave scratches on foreheads or scalps. They're not out to hurt you, but when their eyes are locked on your food, you're basically collateral damage. Imagine this. You're walking along a busy street in Varanasi, holding a small skewer of roasted meat. The air smells of spices, the river glimmers nearby, and suddenly you feel a rush of wind. Before you can blink, your hand is empty. You look up, and there's a kite soaring away, your dinner dangling from its claws. And all around you, the locals just laugh, because to them, this is completely normal. What makes kites fascinating is how they've adapted to human life. They thrive not in untouched wilderness, but in the very heart of cities, weaving their survival into ours. They've watched us, learned our patterns, and figured out exactly how to exploit them. They're proof that not all predators rely on brute force. Some rely on agility, cunning, and the perfect moment of distraction. So, next time you're in kite country, ask yourself this: would you be bold enough to eat in the open, knowing a bird might dive bomb you at any second? Or would you keep one hand on your food and the other waving a cloth, ready to fend off a thief with wings?
Cassowaries. When you think of dangerous birds, your mind probably jumps to raptors, eagles, hawks, or owls. But let me introduce you to a bird that doesn't even fly, and yet is ranked among the most dangerous on Earth. The cassowary. Native to the rainforests of Australia and Papua New Guinea, cassowaries look almost prehistoric. Standing up to 6 feet tall, with a horn-like casque on their head and brilliant blue and red neck skin, they could easily pass for something out of Jurassic Park. But here's the real reason people fear them: their legs. Cassowaries deliver kicks with enough power to disembowel a person. And they don't just kick forward, they slash downward and outward with dagger-like claws on each foot, the inner claw being up to 5 inches long. Think of it like being raked with a mini scythe. Here's the survival trick: crouch low. Cassowaries are built to strike at the stomach and chest level of an upright human. By dropping into a low crouch, you reduce the chance of those claws connecting with your vital organs. Yes, you might take a hit to the arm, shoulder, or even your back, but it's far better than exposing your abdomen.
Rangers in cassowary country often advise people to back away slowly, keeping low if the bird charges, because standing tall just makes you the perfect target. Why would such a bird attack in the first place? Usually it's about territory or food. Cassowaries are solitary and don't like intruders. If you cross their path or get too close to their chicks, they see you as a threat. And once they've decided to charge, there's no mistaking it. They sprint at speeds up to 30 miles per hour, leaping forward with both feet like a feathered gladiator. Imagine this. You're trekking through dense jungle, the air heavy with heat in the buzz of insects. Suddenly, through the foliage, you see it. A cassowary, tall and still, glaring at you with those piercing eyes. You freeze, hoping it'll just walk away. Instead, it lowers its head, ruffles its feathers, and starts to advance. The ground shakes under its steps. Your instinct is to stand tall, to wave your arms, but you remember the advice. Get low. You crouch just as it leaps. Those claws swipe above your head, missing your chest by inches. You scramble backward, heart pounding while the bird hisses and eventually retreats into the forest. You've just survived one of the rarest but most terrifying encounters with a bird on Earth. What's chilling about cassowaries is how they blur the line between bird and dinosaur. They remind us that flightless doesn't mean harmless. In fact, it means the opposite. Everything about them is engineered for raw, ground-level combat. So here's the question. If a creature that looks like a living velociraptor came sprinting at you through the jungle, would you remember to crouch and make yourself a harder target? Or would instinct betray you, leaving you standing tall, right in the path of those lethal claws?
Secretary birds. Most birds of prey rely on talons and beaks, not the secretary bird. This long-legged African raptor has a very different weapon, its feet. Instead of swooping down to snatch prey, the secretary bird prefers to stomp its enemies to death, especially snakes. Standing nearly 4 feet tall, with crane-like legs and an eagle's hooked beak, the secretary bird patrols the grasslands like a soldier on watch. When it spots movement in the grass, a cobra, viper, or mamba, it strikes with astonishing precision. Its kicks deliver force so fast that snakes are often stunned or killed instantly, sometimes in just a handful of blows. Scientists once measured their stomps at 5 times the force of their body weight, like a martial artist slamming down a steel-toed boot. Now imagine you're in the savannah, tired from hiking, and you rest against a rock. Overhead, you notice one of these birds circling. You're not prey, but if you're lying exposed in snake-like fashion, the bird may misinterpret your movement. Here's where traditional bush wisdom comes in. Hug the rock ledges. Locals say that secretary birds are less likely to strike at anything tight against hard stone. Their stomping technique works best on open ground, where they can pin and hammer writhing prey. If you wedge yourself close to rocks or under ledges, the bird can't get the right angle to deliver its deadly kick. It's not that secretary birds haunt humans, they don't. But mistaken identity can be dangerous. Movement in tall grass, glint of skin, even a wriggle of clothing might look too much like the serpents they're hardwired to kill. And unlike most raptors, they don't hesitate. Once they've committed to a strike, they drive their long legs downward with relentless rhythm, wings spread wide for balance. Picture the scenario. You're crouched on the savanna, collecting firewood. Out of the corner of your eye, you see a flash of feathers. The bird lands a few yards away, crest feathers rattling like quills. Suddenly, it charges, legs pumping like pistons. Your heart leaps. There's no time to run. You press yourself flat against a boulder, pulling arms and legs in tight. The bird circles, stomping the ground nearby, frustrated by the barrier. After a tense minute, it decides you're not worth the effort and strides off, resuming its patrol for real snakes. Encounters like this are rare, but they remind us how specialized predators can be. Secretary birds are nature's executioners for venomous serpents, keeping ecosystems balanced by thinning populations of deadly snakes. Their stomp is both a hunting technique and a survival tool perfected over millennia. The eerie part? In that moment of misunderstanding, you realize that the same instinct that keeps people safe from snakes, lying still in the grass, might actually put you in the strike zone of the savanna's strangest bird of prey. And only quick thinking, sliding under rock cover, spares you from a bone-crushing kick. So tell me, if you saw those long legs and that piercing gaze aimed your way, would you freeze like prey or move fast for stone cover before the stump comes down?
Harpy Eagles. If you've ever seen a harpy eagle up close, you know why people call it the jungle harpy or even a flying bear. This bird is a monster in the skies of Central and South America. It doesn't just snatch prey, it dominates with talons so big they can rival the grizzly bear's claws. Each one can grow over 4 inches long, and when those talons clamp down, they can crush bones like snapping twigs. Now, unlike vultures or hogs that scavenge, harpy eagles are serious hunters. They go after monkeys, sloths, and even animals that outweigh them. How? By ambush. They patrol the upper canopy of dense rainforests, silently gliding and perching at the edges where tree lines open up. And this is where humans can get into trouble, because hanging around the canopy edges puts you right where they hunt. Imagine you're trekking in the jungle, stopping to admire the view where the treetops part. You're hot, sweaty, leaning near a clearing. That's exactly the kind of spot where a harpy eagle might be scanning for movement. To the eagle, your head turning, your arms shifting, even your backpack straps dangling, could mimic the movements of monkeys it normally preys on. And remember, to a bird with talons designed to rip through primates, you're not that different in outline. That's why experienced jungle guides have this rule. Don't linger at the canopy edge. Move either deeper undercover, where visibility breaks up your outline, or stay lower to the ground, where the eagle's dive attack loses effectiveness. Because if it decides to strike, you don't hear a warning screech. Harpy eagles attack in silence, swooping at speeds of 50 miles per hour. Wings spread nearly 7 feet wide. By the time you notice a shadow, The talons are already inches from you. Now, would a harpy eagle deliberately hunt a human? Not really. Attacks are extremely rare, and usually it's about mistaken identity or protecting a nest. But here's where it gets tricky. Locals climbing trees for fruit or honey have reported sudden ambushes. To a nesting harpy, a human climbing a trunk looks like a predator after its chicks. And if you think you can wave it off, think again. Those talons lock in with a grip force measured at over 500 pounds per square inch. That's enough to puncture a skull or crush an arm before you even react. So, here's the takeaway. If you're in harpy country, stay away from canopy edges. Don't climb trees near nests and avoid sudden movements when you hear wing beats overhead. Think about how you'd avoid crocodile shores by not kneeling near the water. It's the same principle, just vertical instead of horizontal. It's wild to realize that in some parts of the world, the deadliest ambush predator isn't on the ground. It's perched above, waiting with talons that could snap your bones in a heartbeat. Makes you wonder, would you feel safer in the jungle, staring at the ground for snakes? Or looking up, scanning for the silent shadow of the harpy eagle?
Gulls. Most people think of gulls as noisy beach scavengers, the kind of bird that swoops in to steal fries or raid your picnic basket. But here's something most people don't know. When gulls feel threatened, they've got a disgusting but effective weapon. They'll vomit. Yep, they literally puke up whatever's in their stomach. Fish, scraps, half-digested garbage, not just to gross you out, but to lighten their bodies before an attack dive. Think of it as an aerial pre-strike maneuver. By dumping their stomach load, gulls shave off precious weight, making themselves faster and more agile in the air. It's kind of like a fighter jet ejecting fuel tanks before combat. And once they've purged, they don't just fly off. They often dive straight toward the threat, wings tucked, beak aimed like a spear. Now here's the creepy part. Gulls don't usually go for your arms or legs. They aim for your face, your eyes, your scalp, anything vulnerable and exposed. Biologists think this behavior comes from the way gulls defend their nests. They see the head of an intruder as the most dangerous part, the part that's watching or threatening their chicks. So when gulls attack, they'll strike at the crown, peck at the scalp, or even rake their claws across your forehead. This is why in places where gulls are aggressive, seaside cliffs, piers, fishing villages, you will see locals wearing hats, hoods, or even makeshift headgear. It doesn't need to be armor-plated. Just having something between your scalp and that beak makes all the difference. A gull hitting bear skin can draw blood with a single strike, but a cap or even a bandana can absorb the blow and keep them from latching on. Picture this. You're walking along a rocky shore, maybe near a nesting site you didn't realize was occupied. Suddenly, the gulls start circling above, screaming that eerie laughter-like call. Then, splat! One of them vomits mid-air, spraying half-digested fish just yards away. That's your warning sign. You might think it's gross and random, but in reality, they're gearing up for attack. Seconds later, the same bird tucks its wings and dive bombs your head. Without protection, you're scrambling, ducking, trying not to take a beak to the eye. With a hood or cap, though, you can deflect the strike, keep your eyes safe, and back out of their nesting zone without serious injury. It sounds comical, protect yourself from vomiting birds, but when you realize how calculated the behavior is, it becomes less funny and more a survival lesson. Gulls are opportunistic, aggressive, and way smarter than people give them credit for. Their puke isn't just about being gross, it's a built-in tactic to fight lighter and faster. So next time you're by the sea, don't just worry about them stealing your snacks. Look up, watch for the circling, and remember, if a gull throws up near you, it's not sick. It's warning you that you are about to be the next target. And a little headgear might just save your face.
Ravens. When most people think of ravens, they imagine spooky forests, graveyards, or maybe a talking bird in a poem. But ravens aren't just mysterious. They're clever, social, and sometimes downright dangerous. One of the most chilling accounts of their intelligence comes not from modern science, but from ancient Icelandic sagas. Believe it or not, these stories describe ravens doing something that almost sounds made up, working together to throw rocks at people. Let that sink in for a second. Birds throwing rocks. That's not the kind of bird attack you expect. Yet multiple sagas describe scenes where ravens, perched on cliffs, would dislodge stones and drop them on humans below. Whether you take these tales as pure history or myth with a kernel of truth, they line up disturbingly well with what scientists know today. Ravens are capable of planning, coordinating, and even using tools. Now, think about how this would play out in survival terms. You're hiking in rocky country, maybe Iceland, maybe the American West, where ravens thrive. You stop below a cliff face, taking a breather. Up above, a group of ravens is watching you. They're not just idly flapping around, they're studying you. If they feel territorial, or if they think you're competition for food, they may act. And their act isn't a direct dive bomb like gulls or eagles. Instead, they use gravity as their weapon, nudging loose stones toward the edge until, bam, a rock crashes down uncomfortably close to you. Ravens today are still seen dropping objects, not usually on people, but as part of play or hunting. They've been documented dropping nuts onto roads for cars to crack open, or tossing sticks to test the reactions of predators. It's not hard to imagine that, centuries ago, humans found themselves on the receiving end of those tricks, especially in rugged landscapes where one falling rock could mean injury or death. So, what's the lesson here? If you're in raven country, don't underestimate them. These birds have excellent memories and can even recognize individual human faces. If you mess with them, say try to raid a nest or chase them off, they can hold a grudge, and they might not act alone. Groups of ravens often work in teams, communicating with complex calls and body language. That means if one decides you're a problem, the rest may join in. Protecting yourself isn't about fighting back. It's about positioning. Avoid lingering at the base of cliffs or ledges where ravens are perched. If you notice them gathering overhead and shifting objects, move out into open ground where falling debris can't reach you. And if you're carrying food, keep it sealed.
Ravens are notorious for associating humans with easy meals, and competition is often what sparks aggression in the first place. It's kind of eerie, really. Humans like to think of ourselves as the only creatures with the smarts to use tools and strategize. Yet here we are, with records over 1,000 years old, describing battles of wits between people and birds. Maybe the ravens in those sagas weren't exaggerations after all. They were simply reminders that survival sometimes means outthinking an enemy with wings and a brain sharp enough to drop rocks on your head.
Sperm whales. When you think of apex predators, your mind probably goes to lions, sharks, or maybe giant snakes. But deep under the ocean, there's a creature that hunts in a way almost no other predator does. It doesn't just chase or bite. It uses sound as a weapon. The sperm whale, the largest predator on Earth, has a built-in sonar system so powerful that scientists believe it can actually stun prey with blasts of sound. Picture this. You're a diver, descending into the blue silence. Suddenly, you hear a clicking noise. At first, it's faint. Tick, tick, tick. Like someone tapping on metal far away. But as the whale gets closer, the clicks get faster and louder until they become a rapid-fire barrage. Divers who have been near sperm whales during these moments describe something eerie. Their whole bodies begin to vibrate. Some say they feel a buzzing in their bones. Others admit to being disoriented, dizzy, or even paralyzed for a moment. That's the whale's weapon in action. The science behind it is wild. Sperm whales produce the loudest biological sound in the animal kingdom, up to 230 decibels. For comparison, a jet engine is about 150 decibels. At close range, these clicks are so intense they can physically shake tissue. Now imagine being a squid or fish in the whale's path. One sonar blast, and you're suddenly frozen, stunned, floating helplessly as a 50-ton predator glides in to swallow you whole. Humans aren't prey, but the effect still applies. Divers who have wandered too close sometimes report temporary vertigo, blurred vision, and even nausea. It's like getting hit with an invisible shock wave underwater. You don't see it coming. You just feel your insides rattle. And the worst part? There's no defense. You can't cover your ears or swim out of range fast enough. If a sperm whale decides to aim those clicks at you, you're at its mercy. So, how do you survive such a predator? The key is understanding its behavior. Sperm whales don't just blast randomly. They use sonar to locate and target prey in pitch-black depths. If you're diving in areas known for whales, you avoid descending into those hunting zones, especially at night when they feed most actively. If you do hear the clicks, the best move is to stay calm, remain still, and avoid acting like frantic prey. Fast, jerky movements in the water make you resemble the squid and fish they're actually after.
there's also respect involved. Whale researchers who swim near sperm whales keep distance not just for safety, but because they know the animal is always in control. It can sense your heartbeat through sonar, map your body shape in seconds, and decide instantly whether you're a threat, a nuisance, or simply background noise. Think about that for a moment. A predator so advanced it hunts with sound waves, and so powerful that even the largest submarines have been compared to its size and strength. On land, we worry about claws, teeth, and poison. In the deep ocean, the deadliest weapon might just be a click you don't hear until your body starts to shake.
Leopard seals. If you've ever seen a leopard seal, you know they're nothing like the cute, playful sea lions people imagine when they think of seals. These Antarctic predators are built like torpedoes, with jaws that could snap a penguin in half. And here's the part most people don't know. They don't just hunt with speed and teeth. They use deception. Leopard seals have been observed mimicking penguin calls, a trick that can lure curious birds or even confuse humans who don't realize the sound isn't what it seems. Imagine this. You're trekking across the ice with a research team, bundled against the wind. In the distance, you hear the high-pitched call of penguins, maybe a colony just out of sight. But instead of finding a crowd of birds, you're standing near a stretch of water, and the only thing breaking the surface is a sleek, spotted head with jaws big enough to crush bone. That penguin chorus you thought you heard? It may have been a leopard seal playing ventriloquist. For penguins, the danger is obvious. Their survival depends on recognizing colony calls in a landscape of endless white and crashing waves. A false call can pull them off course, making them easy targets. But here's where it gets unnerving. Explorers and divers have also reported moments of eerie mimicry. Picture being under the ice, surrounded by the muffled clicks and chirps of marine life, when suddenly you hear what sounds like a penguin nearby. Only later do you realize no penguin was in sight, just a predator with an incredible vocal range. So how does this matter for survival? For one, it means don't trust your ears alone in leopard seal territory. If you're exploring Antarctic waters or ice shelves, any sound of nearby penguins should match up with visible birds. If you hear calls but see nothing, be cautious. Stay away from water edges where seals like to ambush. Scientists say many seal attacks happen when researchers or photographers lean too close to ice holes, distracted by noises they assumed came from harmless birds. Leopard seals are opportunistic hunters. They'll take penguins, fish, and even other seals. But they're also intensely curious about humans. Some explorers have described encounters where a seal circled them slowly, almost like it was testing their reactions. Add the element of sound mimicry, and you start to realize you're not just dealing with a brute force predator. You're dealing with an animal that uses psychological tricks. Here's the eerie takeaway. In Antarctica, the rules of survival flip. On land, humans rely on listening for danger, the crack of a branch or the roar of a predator. But down there, on the ice,
Listening might mislead you. You have to be visual, not just auditory. If your brain says penguins nearby, but your eyes say otherwise, believe your eyes. And really, doesn't that give you chills? A seal of all animals pretending to be something else to lure prey closer? It's like nature's version of a con artist hiding beneath the frozen waves. The kind of predator you don't just watch for, you have to question what you're hearing, too.
Dolphins. When you hear dolphin, you probably imagine playful creatures leaping beside boats or rescuing shipwrecked sailors in old legends. And to be fair, dolphins do have a long history of defending humans from sharks. There are countless stories of wild pods circling swimmers, driving sharks away with powerful rams, or even escorting people safely back to shore. It almost feels like there are allies in the ocean. But here's the twist most people don't realize. Wild dolphins aren't always gentle guardians. Sometimes they can turn into warning machines or even aggressors. Divers and researchers have reported encounters where dolphins rammed them in the chest or side. Not hard enough to kill, but definitely enough to leave bruises and knock the air out of their lungs. Why? To warn them. Think of it like this. Dolphins are highly territorial, especially when pods have calves. They don't just want to chase predators away. They want control over their space. If a diver drifts too close, the dolphins may not bite. Their teeth are sharp, but rarely used against people. Instead, they use their nose and body weight like battering rams. A single strike from a 600-pound dolphin can feel like being hit by a speeding linebacker underwater. It's their way of saying, "Back off, you don't belong here." Now, picture the scene. You're floating peacefully, watching fish dance through the reef. Out of nowhere, a pod of dolphins appears, sleek, fast, playful-looking. At first, you feel safe. After all, these are the animals famous for saving swimmers. But then one peels off, aiming straight at you. Before you can react, it slams into your ribs and darts away. Your lungs burn, bubbles escape, your body spins. Was that aggression? Not exactly. It was a message. The pod just told you, in no uncertain terms, that you're in their zone. For survival, the lesson is simple. Don't mistake friendliness for trust. Dolphins aren't domesticated. They're apex predators in their own right, capable of killing sharks with teamwork and speed. If you find yourself around a pod in the wild, the best move is to stay calm, keep distance, and avoid sudden movements. If they circle you tightly or start bumping you, it's time to retreat. That's not play, that's pressure. It's kind of humbling, isn't it? The same animal that might save your life from a shark can also punish you for being somewhere you don't belong. It shows how thin the line is between being protected by nature and being put in your place by it. So next time you see dolphins, ask yourself, are they the smiling heroes of the sea, or are they sizing you up, deciding whether to shield you or shove you away? Either way, in their world, you play by their rules.
Walruses. When you picture a walrus, you probably think of a sleepy, mustached giant lounging on the ice. Big, slow, maybe a little goofy. But don't let that image fool you. Walruses are some of the most unpredictable and downright dangerous creatures in the Arctic. With tusks that can grow 3 feet long and weigh over a ton, these animals had the strength to flip small boats like toys. And here's the kicker. It happens most often during breeding season, when males are territorial and hyper-aggressive. Now imagine this. You're navigating a narrow stretch of Arctic water in a kayak or inflatable dinghy, trying to hug the edge of the ice for safety. Suddenly, you hear a deep bellow echoing across the flow. A massive walrus surfaces beside you, tusks gleaming, eyes fixed. Before you can even process what's happening, the animal surges upward, slamming those tusks against your boat. The impact is like getting rammed by a car bumper. If you're unlucky, your craft flips, tossing you into freezing water where hypothermia can hit in minutes. The danger isn't just their size, it's their behavior. Walruses don't see boats as harmless. To them, a vessel drifting near their territory looks like a rival or predator. In breeding season especially, males are wired to defend their harem of females and calves. They'll bellow, charge, and ram anything that gets too close. And unlike seals, walruses don't just bluff. They follow through, using tusks as battering rams. Those same tusks they use to haul themselves out of the water or break ice can punch straight through a thin wooden hull. So how do you avoid becoming walrus target practice? The key is staying clear of ice edges during breeding season. That's where walruses gather in the biggest numbers, forming huge colonies. If you must travel those waters, keep your distance, way more than you'd think. Local guides often recommend at least 100 meters or more, because a charging walrus can close distance shockingly fast. And don't mistake their slow crawl on ice for sluggishness in water. In their element, they're like underwater tanks, fast, maneuverable, and relentless. There are stories from Arctic explorers that hammer this point home. Entire sled teams stranded after walruses rammed supply boats. Hunters thrown into icy water after getting too close to a haul-out. Even modern researchers in motorboats report the terrifying sight of tusks slamming against their hulls, shaking the entire vessel. If a walrus decides to engage, your only real defense is distance and awareness. It's wild to think about, really. Most people imagine polar bears as the Arctic's top danger. But sometimes, the real threat isn't stalking you from the ice. It's rising from below, armed with tusks and temper. So here's the rule. In walrus territory, the ice edge isn't your friend. It's their battlefield. And the safest way to survive? Give those tusked giants all the space they demand. Because once they charge, you won't win that fight.
Sea lions. Most people picture sea lions as playful circus performers or lazy sunbathers sprawled on coastal rocks. But in the wild, they're anything but harmless. Sea lions are intelligent, fast, and surprisingly aggressive, especially when they feel you've entered their territory. And unlike sharks, which usually strike in single bursts, sea lions are pack hunters. They use group tactics to corner prey. Now imagine this. You're snorkeling in what seems like calm waters off the coast of California or South America. At first, it feels magical. Sleek shapes darting beneath you. Curious brown eyes circling in wide arcs.
You might even mistake their first passes as playful curiosity. But then you notice something unsettling. Instead of scattering, they're moving together, circling tighter and tighter around you. Suddenly, you realize you're being herded, just like they would with a school of fish. Sea lions don't always attack outright. Instead, they pressure you with coordinated movements. One surges from below, another cuts across your flank, a third rushes your back. It's not random, it's strategy. In the ocean, this maneuver is used to exhaust and disorient prey, forcing it into tighter and tighter spaces until escape seems impossible. For a human caught in that pattern, panic is almost guaranteed. And once you panic, you splash. Splashing signals weakness. Weakness makes them escalate. So what's the counter? The trick is breaking their formation. Sea lions are incredibly fast in straight pursuits, but not nearly as efficient when their target moves unpredictably. Swimming in erratic zigzag patterns throws off their coordination, making it harder for the group to pen you in. Another counterintuitive move, diving downward instead of trying to flee at the surface. Sea lions expect prey to flee upward, toward the air. Going the opposite direction can sometimes confuse them just long enough to break free of the ring. And make no mistake, their power is real. A single bull sea lion can weigh close to 1,000 pounds and bite with enough force to crush bone. There are accounts of divers being rammed in the ribs hard enough to knock the wind out of them, or worse, incapacitate them underwater. Fishermen have been yanked overboard by sea lions, leaping after caught fish. And in mating season, males become hyper-territorial, treating even curious swimmers as rivals to be driven out or destroyed. It's easy to underestimate them because they're not classic predators in the same sense as sharks or crocodiles. But that's part of the danger. Their intelligence means they don't just hunt with instinct, they hunt with teamwork. And when that teamwork is turned on you, the ocean around you suddenly feels a lot smaller. The lesson? Never assume curiosity equals safety. If you ever find yourself in the water surrounded by sea lions, don't wait for the circle to close. Break the formation, swim unpredictably, and, above all, don't panic. Because the moment you become just another flailing creature in their eyes, the odds tilt hard against you.
Polar bears. If you ever want to understand what apex predator really means, look no further than the polar bear. These aren't just oversized teddy bears roaming the ice. They're specialized stalkers, and they've been perfecting their craft for tens of thousands of years. What makes them particularly terrifying is their silence. Unlike lions that roar or wolves that howl, polar bears prefer absolute stealth. They don't charge loudly across the ice. They creep, they watch, and they wait until the distance between you and them is small enough to vanish in a single rush. Now here's something most people don't realize. Humans are terrible at spotting them. Polar bears blend seamlessly into the ice and snow, their fur acting almost like a natural cloak.
Even seasoned Arctic explorers have walked straight into danger without noticing a white bulk crouched low in the distance. But dogs? Dogs know. Studies and countless expedition records show that sled dogs pick up on polar bears about 90% of the time before the humans do. Their noses and instincts fire off alarms long before your eyes catch that ghostly figure on the horizon. This is why for centuries, Inuit hunters and Arctic explorers never traveled without dogs. The dogs weren't just there for pulling sleds, they were the early warning system. When a team of huskies suddenly stiffens, growls, or starts barking wildly, you'd better pay attention. Chances are a polar bear has already set its sights on you. And here's where it gets even scarier. Polar bears aren't ambush predators in the traditional sense. They're patient. They will stalk you for hours, sometimes even for a full day before making their move. That means by the time you notice them, they've already been tracking you, analyzing your movements, and waiting for the moment you're most vulnerable. Sitting down to rest, distracted, setting up camp, that's when they strike. So, how do you survive an animal like this? First off, awareness is everything. If you're in polar bear territory without dogs, you're essentially blind. Modern explorers often use flares or tripwire alarms around camps because if a polar bear sneaks up silently at night, you may never wake up in time. Second, never assume distance equals safety. Polar bears can sprint at around 40 kilometers per hour, 25 miles per hour. On ice, that's practically teleportation compared to a human trying to run in heavy boots. Some survival guides say making yourself big or loud can sometimes deter smaller predators. That doesn't really work here. A polar bear isn't intimidated by humans. If it's hungry enough, it sees you as calories wrapped in warm clothing. The more reliable strategy is prevention. Dogs as alarms, constant scanning of the horizon, and never leaving food scraps or scents around camp. Polar bears can smell prey from over 20 kilometers away. That's farther than most people drive to work in the morning. So the hard truth is this. In polar bear country, you're not the one doing the watching. You're the one being watched. The only reason you might live to tell the tale is if you brought companions with sharper senses than your own. And more often than not, that means dogs. Without them, you're walking blind through the hunting grounds of the Arctic's most relentless predator. Killer whales in captivity. When most people think of killer whales, also called orcas, they picture majestic black and white giants leaping out of the ocean in nature documentaries. Or maybe they think of the old marine park shows where trainers rode on their backs like it was all fun and games. But here's a darker side of the story. When orcas in captivity decide to lash out, they often go for one very specific target first: your feet. And this isn't random. Trainers who worked closely with orcas have documented a chilling pattern. When an orca attacks, its first move is often to grab a trainer's foot or ankle and yank them under. Why the feet? Because it's a control tactic. By holding your feet, the orca has total leverage over your body. No matter how strong you are, once you're being pulled by a multi-ton predator with a jaw like a hydraulic press, you're not in control anymore. They drag you wherever they want, usually deeper into the water. Some survivors have said the feeling wasn't always pure aggression. Sometimes it was almost like the orca was playing But that's not comforting when the game involves being held underwater until your lungs burn. The sad reality is that in captivity, orcas often develop stress, boredom, and frustration. In the wild, they swim up to 100 miles a day and live in complex family pods. Stuck in concrete tanks, they get restless, and those emotions sometimes get channeled into sudden, violent outbursts toward their trainers. There are famous cases where this played out. Trainers pulled underwater, slammed into walls, even tossed around like toys. And again, the first move was almost always at the feet. Think about that for a second. It's not just brute force, it's strategy. They know that if they control your base, your balance, your ability to swim or escape, they control everything. That's not instinct alone. That's intelligence. So, what do you do if you're in that situation? Honestly, there aren't many good answers. Some trainers have tried curling into a ball to make themselves harder to grip. Others learned to carry safety tools, like long poles or even special belts with quick-release weights that might give them a fighting chance. But the truth is, once an orca decides to hold you, you're in its world. You can't outswim it. You can't outmuscle it. And if it decides not to let go, there's very little you can do. What's important for the rest of us isn't surviving that exact scenario. It's recognizing what it reveals about orcas. They're not mindless killers, and they're not harmless pets. They're apex predators with intelligence equal to great apes. They know how to manipulate, how to intimidate, and how to maintain total control in an encounter. So next time you see one leaping gracefully out of the water, remember, it's not just muscle and instinct at work. It's a strategy. And in captivity, when that strategy turns against a human, it starts at the feet.
Narwhals. You've probably seen them in documentaries, swimming gracefully under Arctic ice, their long, spiraled tusks piercing the water like something out of a fantasy. Cute, magical, almost mystical, right? Well, don't let that image fool you. In reality, narwhals can be surprisingly aggressive, especially during mating season, when males use their tusks to joust each other. And here's the kicker. Humans who stumble too close can get caught in the crossfire. Inuit hunters and explorers have passed down survival lore for generations. The key is silence. If you make noise near narwhals, splashing, shouting, or even paddling loudly, you risk triggering defensive or competitive behaviors. Males may see you as a rival or threat and swing their tusks aggressively. Remember, those tusks aren't just ornamental. They can grow over 8 feet long and are capable of puncturing through thick ice or the sides of boats. A careless movement can turn a seemingly calm pod into a dangerous arena. Imagine this. You're in a small kayak, navigating icy channels dotted with floating narwhal pods. It's breathtaking, the kind of scene photographers dream of. But as you move closer, one of the males begins jousting with another, tusks crossing in a spectacular underwater ballet. If you make any sudden noise or motion, the jousting pattern can shift toward you. One sharp jab of that spiral tusk, even by accident, could pierce your boat or worse, strike a limb. Inuit guides always emphasize keeping your distance and minimizing motion. Silence, slow paddling, and staying outside their immediate arena of movement is your best protection.
Narwhals also have another quirk. They navigate using echolocation clicks to sense objects and communicate. Sudden loud sounds, like shouting or splashing, interfere with the sonar, startling them and potentially provoking aggression. So it's not just about avoiding the tusks, it's about not signaling that you're part of their space. In other words, don't announce your presence if you want to stay safe. Move like a shadow, glide like the ice itself, and hope they ignore you. It's fascinating how human survival strategies often hinge on understanding animal behavior, even for a creature as seemingly gentle as a narwhal. The Inuit weren't just lucky. They observed, learned, and codified rules over centuries. Today, modern explorers who respect these guidelines report peaceful encounters, witnessing the majestic beauty of narwhals without risking injury. So here's the lesson. In the Arctic, not all threats roar or bite. Some are quiet, mysterious, and wield weapons that look like they belong in myth. Keep still, keep silent, and let the narwhals joust in their own world. Your life may literally depend on staying invisible in the arena of the sea's most enigmatic unicorns.
Elephant seals, the name alone makes you think of enormous, lumbering beasts basking lazily on sandy beaches. And yes, they can look harmless at first glance, sprawled out like oversized logs. But when breeding season hits, these giants turn into absolute wrecking machines, and humans who wander too close can suddenly find themselves in a very dangerous situation. Male elephant seals, called bulls, spend the season competing for harems of females. These battles aren't casual wrestling matches. They're full-blown smash and crush contests. Bulls slam into each other with their massive heads, bite and roll across one another, sometimes leaving scars and broken bones behind. Their sheer size is staggering. Fully grown males can weigh up to 4,500 kilograms, 10,000 pounds, and stretch over 20 feet long. Imagine a truck barreling toward you at full force, with teeth and weight added. That's what a rival bull feels like when it's fighting for dominance. Here's the kicker. Humans aren't automatically off limits. If a bull perceives you as moving too close to its territory or its harem, you can be mistaken for a rival intruder. The seal doesn't differentiate. You're just a moving shape, potentially threatening its position. Once a bull decides you're in the way, it can charge, crush, and roll with terrifying speed and precision. Observers have reported being knocked over, rolled partially, or narrowly avoiding being pinned by these monsters. And because they're used to fighting other bulls of comparable size, a human doesn't even register in their mind. They act as though you're a slightly smaller threat that must be removed. So what's the survival hack? Distance and observation. Never approach elephant seal colonies, especially during mating season. Even sitting quietly on the sand at the edge of a colony can be risky if the seals feel your presence. Movement triggers their attention. A slow, deliberate retreat is much safer than trying to linger or take photos up close. And if you see bulls clashing, consider that area a no-go zone. These fights can extend hundreds of meters from the center of the harem. Elephant seals are also surprisingly fast on land for their size.
A human might think, I can outrun this, but that's a dangerous assumption. Bulls can lunge quickly, and their weight and momentum make them unstoppable once committed. Even a single nudge can knock someone off their feet. That's why beach signs in elephant seal areas aren't just for decoration. They're literally warning you about being crushed. It's wild to think that on a peaceful-looking beach, a colossal animal can go from lazy sunbather to full-on living bulldozer in seconds. The lesson is simple but critical. Respect their space, never get in the way, and remember, their rivalry instinct don't care if you're human. One wrong move, and you're not just a tourist. You're part of the battle.
Dugongs. When most people think of dugongs, they picture serene, slow-moving sea cows grazing on underwater seagrass. They're gentle, graceful, and about as predatory as a floating couch. But here's a surprising fact. Even these calm herbivores can be dangerous if humans misread their behavior. Divers who try to grab dugongs have accidentally triggered panic responses that put both themselves and the animal at risk. Imagine this. You're swimming in warm, shallow waters off the coast of Australia or the Red Sea, spotting a dugong gliding gracefully near the sandy bottom. It's calm, almost hypnotic, its paddle-like flippers moving slowly, nostrils breaking the surface for a breath every few minutes. You think, what if I get close and touch it? Seems harmless, right? Wrong. Dugongs are strong, muscular, and can move surprisingly fast when startled. If they perceive the human touch as a threat, they may burst away using powerful tail strokes. A diver holding on can be dragged underwater, sometimes deep enough to risk drowning. Why does this happen? Dugongs are prey animals. They've evolved to react quickly to danger, especially in shallow waters where sharks or crocodiles might hunt. A sudden grab triggers a fight-or-flight response. Unlike dolphins, which can sometimes play with humans safely, dugongs don't understand being held. They only know they're trapped. Their panic isn't aggression, it's sheer terror. And because they're much larger than a human, even a panicked retreat can flip a diver, tangle snorkel gear, or pull someone off balance in seconds. For divers, the key takeaway is simple. Observe, don't touch. Enjoy the sight of dugongs from a safe distance. Let them approach you if they're curious, but resist the temptation to interact physically. The gentlest creatures can unintentionally cause serious injury if they feel threatened or trapped. It's a paradox. Their calm, slow movement lulls humans into thinking they're safe, but under the surface, their strength and instinct can turn a peaceful encounter into a dangerous situation in an instant. It's a subtle but important lesson about the ocean in general. Not every threat comes from teeth or claws. Sometimes it comes from sheer size, combined with natural reflexes, and human error triggers the danger. Dugongs aren't hunting you, they're panicking. But in those moments, your life is still at risk. So next time you spot a dugong gliding through crystal-clear waters, take a deep breath, float quietly, and watch. Don't grab. Admire the brace, respect the power, and remember, even the gentlest giants can create chaos when they feel trapped.
Survival underwater isn't just about avoiding predators. It's about understanding behavior, instincts, and knowing when to keep your hands to yourself.